But yeah, I mean, you give them the police bike we have up there and a little rack full of ticket book.
Where's our board?
Well, two of us are here. Hey, Dana.
How you doing, sir?
Dave. Yeah, we're in Newcastle. Yeah.
Again. God.
You're my example today. But yeah, I mean, you give them the police bike we have up there and a little rack full of ticket book.
Where's our board?
Well, two of us are here. Hey, Dana.
Whoa, I've got a lag.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
It was
it's a little bit, there's another guy who looks just like you.
Yeah, it does. That's what I got. Who's that old guy?
We're all these old people in the room except me. And
Are you looking for it?
Yeah.
It's in your file folder. Downloads right there.
That's because I was making.
Well, I sure am glad you never heard it.
After the meeting, I just a minute of your time, Sam.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you're in trouble now.
It's
Sam.
not Sam. I'm in trouble.
oh,
I need assistance.
How about that
Did you
Bear
lock
Creek?
yourself out of your email again?
What?
Did you lock yourself out of your email again?
I don't think I locked myself out. It just doesn't work.
So can you
Did you
start?
do your security training?
Yes.
Okay.
And I also got with Phones Plus.
I think John's still getting you. I think John's getting his.
We're having problems with it. See, I was working fine, and then all of a sudden, in mid-session, there's a little yellow triangle with an exclamation point.
And it's not gonna mess with you like.
And then
if I
it doesn't
have to
work.
let people know
And
anything.
I know, because I wrote down
Doesn't seem like.
my
that.
password when I did it with Phones Plus.
All right, well, we're a minute late and we're gonna go ahead and get started, even though attendance is once again pathetic.
You mean we're pathetic because we showed up?
No, it's everybody around this table who didn't show up. Yes,
I just want to make sure we're clear.
no, you guys are the superstars, it's the other people who are not. And I apologize, Dana, because you deserve a better audience than this, because the stuff you give us.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thanks.
Well, good evening.
Hello.
Good. Quick introduction, there's gonna be more introductions later. I'm Daniel Levac, I'm the Northwest Regional Manager for the Division of Local Governments within the Department of Local Affairs.
Here's Paige.
Okay, yay, one more.
I took a nap and
No,
fell asleep.
that whole sentence again.
It was
Oh, God.
very important, but it changed your life.
We're-
Paige, that sentence.
Oh, We're really only missing, we're missing one person who's really pretty sick and has an infection. And the other person is kind of missing in action. So we're not doing that bad tonight.
Well, and John, I mean, I talked to him earlier, he seems quite good.
Well, he might show up on Zoom.
Ooh,
so
maybe
we'll
I
see.
should phone him.
Yeah, why don't
See
you
if he
call John
forgot.
and just double check it, because he might have forgotten.
Okay.
So Paige, I'm 5 out of 5, all 5.
Really? Oh, I'm not. You saw my email?
No, I didn't yet.
Yeah. I got 2 no's.
Really? Ooh,
Well, I'm not gonna say.
okay,
Just say the email.
yeah, all
I
5.
mean, not terrible no's, just they declined.
Yeah, yeah, well, I told him it was 4 one-hour meetings between now and the end of the year.
You liar.
I am a liar.
John, are you gonna join our work session? Oh, he's in the hall, John is all in here.
I'm in there anyway, so it's different.
All my friends are there.
Okay, good, John. Great, glad to have
Just
you.
missing trustee Mark.
Bye. Pardon?
Just missing trustee Mark.
Yes.
Okay, I try to text him.
Yeah,
He might have forgotten.
yeah, he might have.
And I didn't get it posted until yesterday because I didn't know we had a meeting.
All right, so I am less displeased.
Unless he's here.
Communication.
Hey, we are champs at communication. They get gold stars for that. We just have so much communicating to do that we don't always get it all done. Communication is okay, minus because we missed out, but still.
It's like drinking from a fire hose sometimes.
Oh, God.
Oh, I don't even want to hear that.
Oh,
Trustee Stelter.
Here it comes, yay! It's a flag!
It's so good to see.
We haven't seen this man in person since January.
I have to carry my two different phones in the pockets, so I can't get up in time to ever answer.
Yeah.
I know the feeling.
I don't make it there in time. So
Never.
we're gonna project,
A bit.
Right
on
up
the
here.
screen. Oh, yeah. Gotta sit there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, it's very informal. You can sit where you want. It's so good to see you, John.
Thank you.
It's really nice to see you, John.
Thank you. Good to see you too, all of you.
Yes,
So we actually have a quorum.
we do.
No, we can't decide anything.
No.
What else is there?
There's so many work on so many of these issues. You guys are here. Did you get hold of trustee Martin?
I tested, texted him, but whether I hear back.
Well, let's go ahead and get started.
Is he?
I just sort of.
Oh, maybe he's got his phone on and he'll go, oh.
I'll repeat the first introduction.
Yoki.
This is work, you guys have work to do, so that's your work paper, so obviously it's not a lot. So again, I'm Dave Levack, I'm the regional manager for the Department of Local Affairs, Division of Local Governments for the Northwest. So I cover Moffett County, Rio Blanco County, Mesa County, Garfield County, Delta County, Gunnison County, and Hinsdale. So it covers that area for AGNC, which is the Cog up north, and Region 10, which is the Cog down here. Work with every other state department, particularly the Energy Department, the Broadband Department, CDOT, OED. Those are the primary ones. But here about the Department of Housing, Department of Housing, not the Department of Housing, it's the Division of Housing within DOLA. So it's part of us, it's our sister division within DOLA. So we're very closely on housing stuff. What I'm not going to do tonight is talk a lot about DOLA. We can come back again and do a whole hour or 2 hours just on DOLA and all the programs we have. The programs are just getting more and more numerous every single legislative session. I think we're adding about 20 new programs just from this legislative session. So part of my job, that's part of my job, is to keep track of those and work with local jurisdictions, work with your administrator, and talk about the things you want to do and try to tie them into some of those funding resources. The earlier we can do that, the easier it is to get those resources lined up. The reason is if you start a project and you head down one way, but it's not designed and it's not using all the right words and phrases, that funding may not be available. If I come in at the beginning, we can help with that project. A good example is City of Grand Junction. City of Grand Junction Parks Director called me, they passed a rec center. They want to build a rec center, there's a new sales tax, it's big thing. And he wants to know if we can help provide funding. It's a simple answer, no, we don't fund rec centers. However, if he designs that project right and adds a geothermal field with solar panels to drive the heat transfer pumps, we can pay for the entire geothermal solar energy component of that project. They can use all the construction costs for the actual rec center as their match. In essence, if they're successful getting that energy grant, it's free money. And they reduce their overhead, electric, gas, everything else in their heating program virtually forever.
Yeah.
And in case somebody doesn't think that's big, City of County of Gunnison built a new library. I don't know if many of you have been down there. It's about, I want to say 15,000, maybe a little high, square feet. Came up online late last summer, early fall. Full geothermal field, solar powered heat transfer pumps. The dead of winter, their heating bill was $60.
In Gunnison?
In Gunnison.
That's the coldest place in Colorado.
It is.
A lot of times, yeah.
So it's an example of the kind of things we work with jurisdictions. Again, I'm not going to get into that tonight. That's simply too much. The purpose of tonight is to really talk about how is Paonia governed? How can you potentially do things better? As we go through these things, it's not just my advice. I've been in public service for about 40 years, federal, state, city, county, city manager, deputy county manager, development services administrator, budget manager, finance director, court administrator, and development services administrator. I've been in almost everything. I haven't been in law enforcement other than on the court side. What we're going to talk about is based on best practices. Groups like the International City County Managers Association, ICMA, worldwide, has studied the various forms of government, the way boards work, the way commissions work, and councils work, and has come up with numerous, I know Leslie's a member of it, documents and study and research papers, what works and what doesn't work. So I can't tell you how to run your affairs between the board and the administration and staff, but the intent is to give you the best practices. You can model them, you can not model them, it's really your choice. So before we get started, I got a couple questions that I'd like you to write down your answers and be candid. These answers are not going to be part of the public record. They're for my use, and they'll go back with me. When I get them, I don't want your name on them. I'm not going to say, oh, who's this? I don't care. But be candid in your answers to these questions, because they're important to how I go about moving forward for the rest of the hour to 2 hours. Okay, so the first is, what were you thinking on the way here tonight? And if you were thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be home watching a basketball game, write that down. I don't care. I want you to be candid. The second one is, what's one thing you hope we can accomplish together during this dialogue tonight? And it's a dialogue. It's not just me lecturing. It's a dialogue. And the third is, what is your role as a trustee for Paonia? And I don't want some book answer that you got from some session somewhere. Tell me what you think your job is as a trustee. And the fourth, what's your favorite place in town?
Within the town limits?
In the town limits.
Within the town limits.
Here, of course.
Johnny, you're delicious, like that you need to go home.
Your finger again.
And I understand Ms. Klusmeyer is online with us and joining us through Zoom, so while you guys are writing, I'll say hi to Leslie.
Hi, Dana. I am unfortunately sick, so I'm going to stay muted so I can cough without being heard.
No problem. Nice to hear you.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. I'm not sorry to ask these questions. It looks like everybody just about done. One final question. And it's a tough one.
Oh.
So, I got it.
I mean,
On a scale from 1 to 10, How do you think Paonia compares to other towns and cities on the western slope in terms of efficient and productive functioning of the government?
And what's the low end of the scale?
1 is low. 10 means you guys are rocking it. You're the stellar example. Everybody wishes they could operate the way you do.
It's number 10.
Just remember, you don't need to explain it or anything. All right, so with that in mind, off we go to board training refresher. About 2 hours. It's really going to be kind of dictated by how much of a discussion we have, and I hope it's a lot. Please speak up, ask questions as we go. If there's something that you disagree with, or you have a question on, if you have a story or example, please bring it up. The caveats to that is we don't do it in an accusatory manner. We don't say, oh, so-and-so, we certainly don't name staff, we don't name other board members, we don't name citizens. Okay, we do it respectfully, we do it courteously. It's not meant to drag anybody out or make fun of it. And then we're gonna have some scenarios to go through, and those will be for discussion. Some of the topics may not be 100% on point to the way you do things, and that's okay. Even with those, you may be able to learn. So what we're gonna cover: welcome introductions, roles, responsibilities, professional management, relationship building, which is really working together as a board, establishing goals, setting priorities, effective meetings, and decision-making, legal and ethical issues and scenarios, and those will be found throughout. So with that in mind, I already introduced DOLA. There's a little map of the 8 regions. There are literally 8 of us, and we cover the whole state. And we have 4 assistants. So the role of government, you know, Thomas Jefferson, Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. They kind of memorialize that in the Constitution by saying purpose was to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. What the heck does that all mean, right? Essentially, the founders were very wary of government. They didn't trust government. They were just coming out from tyrannical rule, and they didn't want government to be easy. They wanted it to be hard. They put 3 branches of government, check and balance, you know, stuff you've heard back, way back when we used to teach it in high school social studies. The checks and balance, keep things kind of orderly. You're a statutory town. You only have the powers that are granted to you under Title 31, Article 1, Section 203, and Article 4, Part 3 of the CRS. How many of you have read the statutory authority under which the town operates?
Parts of it.
I'm not saying it's a fun read, but it's an important read, much like your ordinances and your codes are. I would recommend that you do that at some point. So local governments, technically, you have health and safety. And really, from the town of Paonia's perspective, you have police, you have roads, drinking water, and groundwater protection. Groundwater protection is through your wastewater treatment plant. That's what you do for health and safety. The rest of health and safety is done by Delta County and their health department. Under the welfare, I don't know if you have any museums. Okay, you don't have no museum. You don't
Yes,
oh, yeah, I do.
But it's private.
But is it a town museum, run by the town?
No.
Okay, so that's a private enterprise. You don't have schools, you don't run the schools. You don't run the libraries, that's again Delta County. You do run your own parks, you run your own recreation facilities, you have housing and economic development. Now, you don't have housing. You don't own buildings that you rent out to people. You don't have an economic development director, but you are charged with making sure people have housing and that you're having economic development in your town. You have to have economic development, otherwise you don't have a tax base. You don't have a tax base, you don't have revenue, you don't have staff, you don't keep up your infrastructure. Kind of like where we are now, right? So it's important to have those things. So the roles and responsibilities, what is the role here? Okay, you guys all generally got it right. Basically, all kind of have a voice of make things run. It's a little more defined than that. Whoa.
It's fast.
New batteries.
That's a new battery, supercharged Amazon batteries. As elected officials, you're the board of directors for the town. Just like Google, Amazon, everywhere else in business, they have a board of directors. Board of directors doesn't go down and run the production line. They don't go down and figure out how to sell a product to customers. They don't go down and do research and development. They talk to the CEO and the COO and the CFO, and they say, this is the direction we want our company to go. They make those decisions based on input and advice from the CEO, the COO, and the CFO. That's what you guys are. You're the board of directors for the town. You set policy. You really act in two ways, and I'll be more specific. So let's talk about this first. You have fiduciary responsibility for the budget. So you ultimately pass the budget. You say, this is what we're going to spend money on. Again, you don't go in the books and balance the books and say, no, we should spend a little more over here, a little more over there. What should be happening is you provide the policy and the guidance to your administrator and your CFO and say, this is the direction we want the city to go. And we'll get into this more later. They propose a budget to you. You get to come back and say, wait a minute, does that really address this priority that we talked about? And if not, how can we adjust the budget to reflect that priority? That's where you come in on the budget. You use your authority to do the things we talked about before in health, safety, welfare. You hire staff as authorized by code, which I believe in your code is the administrator, the attorney, and the judge. I think those are the only three you guys have authority over. You provide general direction to the staff, general direction through the administrative staff, and ensure there's ongoing two-way communication. That's simply saying, we want reports, we want updates at the board meetings on a regular basis. These are the formats we want reports, the type of information we want reported on. You are entitled to all of that. You cannot make policy decisions if you don't have that stuff. You know, most recently, are we getting good financials or we're not getting good financials? You made a decision. No, we're not. We need to do better. Great. Kudos on you. That's the kind of information you need. And the last one is you have to support staff. One of the worst things that happen in an organization is a board or a board of directors complaining that people driving the trucks to make deliveries aren't getting there fast enough and they're not being on time. It discourages that lower staff from doing, they don't feel appreciated, they think, well, why am I here? I can get another job somewhere else, make more money, do other things. So that's the five basic things. Elements for you to consider. And we'll go over a lot more of this. Professional, accountable, think big picture, be a good steward, be responsible. The electors, the citizens of Paonia chose each of you and entrusted you with their tax money, with their streets, with their police, with the administration of the town, providing them clean water, providing them decent wastewater treatment facilities so the rivers don't get polluted. You're the stewards of that. Be an advocate for the town. One of the things we'll talk about again is don't be an advocate for your own interests. You can be an advocate for your own interests to the extent it stirs good discussion and positive debate. But once the board makes a decision, that's the town decision. And each of you has a responsibility when you go out, whether you agree with the decision or not, to say, no, this is the direction we're going, this is the voice of the town, and here's why, and it's the right thing, period. You can't undermine each other, you can't undermine the majority, because that undermines staff, sends these messages, and you just don't get things done. Be a community builder, always be looking at the whole community, don't be looking at your block or your favorite park or anything else. Forgot your name,
Rick,
Rick. You know, Rick said, oh, don't make any decisions. You gotta be a decision maker. If you're not paid just to meet, you know, bi-weekly.
Yeah, question.
Twice a month. Just to, I wish I could say have soda and cookies, but don't have something.
Drink
You
water.
gotta make decisions. You have to make decisions. Be ethical, and we'll talk about that. And most of all, be respectful. I will tell you that the first meeting I came to, over almost a year and a half ago, I had trustees, and I don't think any of them are still here, RDO administrator, basically calling them incompetent, allowing citizens to come in and call staff incompetent, and other trustees liars. That's not respectful. That's not, you know, while things may go on like that at a bigger level, at the national level, maybe at the state level, you can't afford it at the local level. You just can't. It will tie you up and you'll end up an absolute disaster. So being respectful is one of the big things. I'm gonna spend a little bit of time on it. Become educated in governance, not in government, but in governance and what it takes to govern. You've got organizations, and kudos to Trustee Newsom, went to the Energy and Environment Symposium and learned things, I think, and not just about the energy and the environment, but in talking with your peers. I think you talked with Commissioner Coons for a good extent. You learn how other people do things. You find out what's working, what's not working. I'm wondering, when did somebody last go to a CML conference?
Oh, God, it was 2019.
I was on the executive board back in 2006.
Think things have changed since 06? Yeah. It's candidly unacceptable for you to not send just less than 4 to that conference. So you should send at least 3 people to that conference every year and rotate it. Rotate it. That gives you a networking opportunity, gives you phenomenal educational opportunities to see how other people are doing things, not just in governance, but how are people putting water projects together? How are they dealing with staffing issues? How are they dealing with the silver tsunami? I'm part of it. Not too soon. There's just so much of stuff. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Other people are doing it. And if they're not doing exactly what you need, you can still pull on their ideas and build them. But if you try to do that in a vacuum, it is so time consuming. And the likelihood that you're going to go and try something that somebody already else did and didn't work, and you will have wasted your time, is pretty high. It's a whole lot better to try something that somebody else has done that's worked than not. So you've got Colorado Municipal League, you've got SURSA, you've got Region 10. I don't believe you are active members of Region 10.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're active members of Region 10, participate, go to the training. It's only Montrose, so it's, you know, you need to spend the night when you go to Montrose. Do those things, it just makes sense. And collaborate with other jurisdictions. I have heard the relationship between Paonia and Delta County isn't quite as tight as some other jurisdictions, and there are political differences. We can acknowledge that, but just because you have big scale philosophical political differences, I guarantee you have no differences in the fact that you should have clean water. The county commissioners 1000% agree that citizens should have clean water, and wastewater should be appropriately treated and not sent into the streams that pollute it. Guarantee that. They agree citizens should have good law enforcement. You want law enforcement. So there are a lot more things you can agree on despite the philosophical political divide. And it's worth collaborating with them because you can reach out. I can tell you with Crawford, we reached out and said, Commissioner Crawford needs a little bit of help. Would you be willing to do it? And the county said, you know what, we'll help administer a grant for them. They don't have a lot of capacity. They're not going to give money. They're not going to do all that stuff, but they'll help where they can. So collaborate with other jurisdictions, even if it is Crawford or Hotchkiss. All right, your municipal code. No. Talks about administrative and executive powers. You know, we've talked about kind of your role, and this is where your administrator gets their powers from. They don't just get their powers there, but somebody in the town gave them those powers a long time ago and said, this is the way it's going to be. If you don't let the administrator do their job, you're violating your own code. So the administrator shall take care of the streets, the alleys, the public places, parks, buildings, shops, basically your infrastructure, finances, accounts, funds. They're responsible. You may have a finance director, a finance head, an accountant. Where you end up with that is really up to you and Leslie or whoever you hire. But ultimately, the administrator is responsible for the numbers and making sure they're reported to. Peace, health, welfare, we may not be talking to the police and working with the police on issues that come up. The abatement of nuisances, we just had one of your officers in here talking about abatement of nuisances. They're responsible for that. They're responsible for doing that within the guidelines you have given them. And as much as we like to think, oh, our codes are very clear, they're usually not. There's always some gray area. But you philosophically have given them guidance or should give them guidance. And they need to follow this philosophical framework when they superimpose the code on things that are going on in your city, your town. And then it's like buying supplies. There's a surprise. Now, when there's a certain procurement, they got to get board approval for procurements and purchases over a certain level. But other than that, pens and papers and no, just let them do their job, get the things they need to get the jobs done. Okay? So again, think of the town administrator as the CEO or the chief operating officer, and this is just another list, and I'll leave a copy of this PowerPoint. Samira's got it. So there we go. The attributes of a professional administrator. I understand you're in round 3. We're going to talk about why you may be in round 3. But these are the things you should be looking for. If the person has made it to round 3, you shouldn't be worried about, do they know what a wastewater plant is? Or do they know what 2 + 2 is? Or what an enterprise fund is? They got to know that. It's through the first screening, they've got to know that stuff. You're really looking at these soft skills. Are they a good communicator? Can they answer questions? And it can be a very basic question. Tell us something important about yourself. I'm 42 years old. You know, is somebody going to drag stuff out of, or do they go on and on for 10 minutes when you say, tell us something about yourself? And are you going to be like, oh my God, please shut up? You got to have someone that's a good communicator. They have to have budgeting experience. If they've never handled a budget, that's something to be concerned about. They should at least know basic accounting. They have to have an appreciation for diversity. How many people have heard of IDEA, IDEA, or DEI, or DIE, or IDE? The initials, it used to be IDE, inclusion, diversity, and equity. And now it's for DOLA, inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And the point of that is, when you look out at who comes to your meetings, is it a diverse representation of your town? When you look at your town staff, is it representative of your town? When you look at who's working for the town as contractors, is it representative of the pool of vendors that are available to the town? Or are you very homogeneous, and is the board and the input of the board only representing one segment of interest in the town, to the exclusion of others? And it could be a deliberate exclusion. It most likely is an inadvertent exclusion. And we do that by timing the old meetings. You hold meetings at night. Do working people get off work and then say, oh, I can't wait to go to a board meeting? Do working people fear coming to a board meeting that might last 3 or 4 hours and be people yelling at each other and finger pointing, or they'd rather stay home and watch the Nuggets fight. So how you treat each other, how you treat the citizens, how you physically have accessibility to your environment is all about those things. How do you reach out? Do you have a Hispanic minority in town? If so, how do you communicate to them? Do you communicate to them? Do you have other languages? Do you have other cultures? Do you have Afghan refugees? Other types of things that nobody even knows about if you haven't paid attention to them. What's your disabled community like? Are they involved? Are your disabled caretakers involved in what's going on? Do they have a voice? So there's a lot of things to be thinking about when we talk about diversity, and we'll touch a little bit more on it. There's a whole conferences on diversity, so I can't do that in a segment of 2 hours. They should be creative. They should have new, unique ideas. You know, you can explore that through some of the questions that we provide. They should have public speaking and presentation skills. They should be passionate. One thing nobody will ever blame me for is not being passionate. I'm passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about helping local government. I'm passionate about helping people succeed. They should be good storytellers. They should have impeccable integrity. We'll get more to it, but their integrity and moral compass, unquestionable. In fact, some people think that if you're a manager who has been shown the door and left either voluntarily under difficult circumstances, or you were just flat terminated, oh, we don't want to touch them with hard football. Most of the time, a good administrator has that exit because they stood for what was right. And there were political pressures that didn't want that. Examples, a board member, a commissioner, pushing for a certain person to be hired, or for a certain vendor to be hired, and the administrator saying, no, that's not gonna happen. It's not the way the system works, it's not the way we treat people, it's not the way we select people by personal preference, and they're shown the door. Nothing wrong with it. So if somebody's got that in their history, just explore it. It's not a bad thing at all. In fact, it can be a very good thing. But the rest are fairly self-explanatory. We'll move through there. And this is just a summary page, the role of the board versus the role of the manager. Nothing new that we haven't talked about. You develop the principles, you develop the philosophy, you develop the vision for the town, you hand it to the administrator, and you step back. If the administrator is not getting something done that you think needs to be done, you talk to the administrator. You can talk, any one of you can talk to the administrator one-on-one. You can just go in and say, hey, I heard from citizen Joe that that project that you said was going to get done isn't getting done. Can you give me an update? Now, a good administrator will take that input, provide you an explanation, but at the same time, it reaches a level where they think, you know, the rest of the board should know about this too, because there may be a broader perception. They should put that on their administrator report at a board meeting. But any one of you can talk to an administrator, so please don't be afraid to. Again, you'll have that list. Karen, I don't want to beat a dead horse. Well, in a sense, beat a dead horse anyway. All right. Staff. Your staff are the experts in getting things done. You've got operating ORCs, you've got public works people, you've got park people, you've got street people. They understand how those things should be done, how you fill a pothole. They understand how you treat water, how you clean filters, how you fix leaky pipes. They understand how to do that. It's not your job. You really shouldn't even be to the point where you say, no, that was an interesting thing that came up in the meeting this week. I'm going to do some research, and then I'm going to go stand on the work site to see if what they're doing matches the research. No, don't do that. As soon as you start doing things like that, staff starts to second guess. They start to wonder, who's the boss? Is it the trustee who's standing over here watching my back, probably making comments like, oh, that's not the right answer? Or is it the administrator? Staff should have one and only one boss, and that's the administrator. That doesn't mean you can't talk to staff. You can talk to staff, you can ask them questions. You're very careful not to direct staff, not to give the inference that you're directing staff, not to give the inference that, oh, that's not what I told the administrator. If something comes up and appears to be a gap, take it back to the administrator, period. Don't talk to your other board members. All that does is stir the pot on something you might not even have right information. So talk to the administrator when you've got questions or disputes. The citizens, and we're going to talk about this a little more. Citizens should be participating fully. I question in looking at dozens of your meetings, and sometimes I have nothing to do, so I tune into a YouTube meeting and pay my
Oh,
attention.
Dana, oh, God.
Come on, man, you have a better life than
We
that.
gotta get you a life.
And they're scary. They're scary. Do you know why they're scary? They're scary.
Because we have the same citizens all the time that have an agenda. And
And I'm not necessarily about the agenda,
Yeah.
but it's the same citizens.
we need a broader,
When we talk about diversity, you're only hearing from, I don't know, there's 5 or 6 people that are
Four,
saying,
primarily.
what's the population of Bailey?
1,500.
1600.
1447.
1,600, you're hearing from 4.
Wait a minute, they keep calling them the public.
I know.
I don't get it.
Stop,
Yeah.
stop.
Don't-
Stop, you all, stop it. This is really not the way to go about this. Let me just tell you,
Yep.
the 4 that show up have been showing up for years and are very informed.
Yeah.
But do not forget how this room can be packed when there is an agenda item that people are interested in. They get up and they speak, but people only show up when there's something that's particular to them. You're not gonna see a room packed for an average meeting unless there's a park issue. So please stop denigrating those people who are informed and have made a lot of changes in this town and bring a lot of good information. It's time to stop. Thank you.
And the point again isn't to pick on the 5 or 6, it's to question why are only 5 or 6 coming? And are you structuring? There's something wrong if it's the same 5 or 6 all the time. And they're the only ones that are having input to what's going on in town. There's something wrong. There's simply no denying the way you run your meeting.
I think there's a disconnect between the town government and the citizens. The citizens, for the most part, as long as everything is running, they don't give a damn. As long as there's not a problem, they don't have potholes in their street, there's not crime running rampant, they don't care. This is what they elected people to represent them for. But we also need to have participation from those same citizens that don't seem to care or are too busy. I mean, I remember when I was off the board, I didn't come to meetings because, first of all, I was burnt out on meetings. I spent 3.5 years in this room and I was tired of going to meetings. And second of all, I just didn't have time. Between work and whatever life I had, there wasn't time.
So you raise a good point. When things are going well, people just don't care.
Right.
Are things going well?
No, not in my opinion.
They're
Well, look
getting,
at the numbers.
They're better.
Look at the numbers we gave you. What were the numbers?
Yeah. I think they're so much better than they were. And if you look at our recent meetings, you will see great improvement.
I see an improvement from last year at this time, by far.
Oh, I've seen improvement just the last 6 meetings.
Yes, I see.
Because we have a good administrator and we get good agenda packets. That's
That
the bottom
helps.
line.
We get better information.
The average response from you, average, was about 3.5.
Oh,
3.5.
It sucks.
I said 7 because we have improved
I
so
got
much.
it, but again, I'm not calling anybody out. The average is 3.5.
Yeah.
So there's something going on, and we know what some of the issues are. We got big water problems, we got water treatment problems. We got to find an administrator, we got problems with finances. We get it. Why aren't the citizens getting it? Why aren't they aware of the issues? And I don't understand this. I read some of the stuff in the paper.
I severely disagree with some of the characterizations.
Yeah.
when I moved here 5 years ago, lots of people, lots of different folks came and I talked to people and let's go talk about that thing, and we'd go. Now I talk to people now, meaning the last couple of years, I will not go to one of those meetings, no.
Yeah.
Because they're stressful, dysfunctional, so I'll just refer to it as the dysfunction in a capital D. The dysfunction has crossed the line where it's keeping people out.
And we're gonna get to a whole section on how a meeting should be functional and meaningful. Again, you want citizens to participate. Nothing you do should be to disengage or disenfranchise citizens. That's important. At the very least, John, you said you go out and talk to citizens. That's where most of the input should be. You know, you have, hey, I'm on council and I'm gonna be over at this place having coffee on Tuesday mornings. Please come join me and give me your input. That's where it should happen. That's where you really get to know the voice of the people. Not in these meetings. These meetings are for you guys to do business.
And
Not-
and that's what
not
I
to
get
get
all
all
the
this-
time. I get people who stop me on the street all the time. And people talk to me all the time.
So again, I don't wanna, we're coming back to the meeting thing, believe me, to talk about it again. But whatever you decide, or don't decide as a result of it, always keep in back in mind diversity. You want diversity of opinions. And if you can't get it in here because you just choose not to, or you choose to continue things the way they are, that's fine, then you better be getting out in the community. And if the voices you're hearing in the community are different than the voices you're hearing in here, then make your decisions based on everything you're getting, and not just the voices you're hearing. That's ultimately your responsibility. It's not to just listen to 5 or 6 people, it's to listen to 1,500 people if they're willing to talk. Okay. Answer me. Okay, so now we get to working together as a board. You know, I'm just gonna pause briefly. And I think, you know, John, you started talking about the 5 or 6 people, and it hit a hot spot with Paige.
I didn't even mention.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
You did no names, but no, everybody did.
It's okay. But understand that there are things that you will talk about that upset other people. The key is to address those respectfully with each other. And part of the, I'll call it dysfunction again, the whole thing, is when you say something, and I don't think you were intending to be, you know, sarcastic or biting, but you got to be aware of how that comes across, not to just the people here or on TV, but to your peers. And vice versa. When you bite back, you got to be patient. And sometimes the biting back shouldn't occur in this meeting, because that's where everybody's getting the perceptions, is how are you guys talking to each other, how are you talking to the public, how are you talking to staff. And when you hear, I'm not coming, that's a dysfunctional meeting, they don't want to see that. They don't want to see people fighting on the governing board. They want to see you doing things, getting things done, making decisions, and then getting information and sharing it with the community through these meetings. So you really got to be aware of that. So when we talk about working together as a board, it doesn't mean you just, you know, come like, oh, I'm going to make the same decision all the time and love each other. No. In fact, I encourage productive differences and productive debate. But productive debate is never name calling. It's never sarcastic. It never involves rolling eyes or slamming papers or pens or pulling back chairs or any of that stuff. The public picks up on everything. And when we talk about those as signs of dysfunction, I will suggest to you that one of the problems you have had, and hopefully can get past in getting an administrator, is administrators, when they think about taking a job, do the same thing I do. They get online and they look at board meetings. They read the papers, they look at the board meetings, and they look at home prices. That's it. Those are the 3 things they look at. And home prices are home prices. They are what they are. And nobody's going to pay on them just because it's the only place they can afford to live if they don't think it's a good working environment. So if any of you get bored some nights, go back and look at some of those meetings and look at it with that filter. If I were an administrator thinking of coming to work for the town, what? Okay. So working together is a complete symbiosis. It's not just the board working together. It's not just staff doing their thing. It's the two working together. So it's not just the CEO doing a great job. It's the COO doing a good job, the CFO doing a good job, all the staff underneath them doing a good job, and the board giving good, clear direction in terms of what needs to be done and ensuring that all the executives know what needs to be done and holding them accountable, but holding them accountable in a respectful manner. Obstacles. All you board members may not see each other as part of the same team. You may see Rick, he's the guy that was here 15 years ago and thinks he knows everything about this town. Henry, he's been married forever, just doesn't know anything, just breaks ties. Whatever those are, they just serve to split you apart and not bring you together. Appreciate the differences that you have. The differences that you have should help you make good decisions. If there's somebody who's, I don't want any chlorine in my water, period. We should drink it straight out of the water. And somebody else is like, oh, EPA's not tough enough. You know what? There's middle ground. And you guys can look at studies, get facts, and decide, you know what, there's regulations, we have to comply, or else we'll get fined. And you can find middle ground and reconcile those 2 points of view. That's very important that you do that. This is a big one. Difficulty in moving on. You have a close vote, the side that loses, oh, I was wrong. And they run out in the community. And they badmouth the decision. And they badmouth the trustees that made that decision. You talk about something that'll split town. That'll do it. People start picking sides. And you've got what's going on at the national level. And what do you have at the national level? You got extreme left. And some people go, oh, those are the progressive. And you get the extreme right. And people say, oh, that's the MAGA. And where are most people? They're right smack in the middle. Right smack in the middle. And when we get to making decisions, we miss it because either that side controls or that side controls. And we miss the voice of what really matters.
It's the old squeaky wheel thing. That whoever's the loudest gets whatever they want.
Now, it can't be that.
That's wrong.
It can't be that. You guys have an obligation to base your decisions on the professional advice you get from staff. You can do independent research. You should share it if you've done independent research. You should say, hey, I looked on Wikipedia or whatever source you're going to depend on and share it with the rest of the board. You can bring in materials. You can do whatever you want. If there's information you want to share with the rest of the board. You don't have to be silent and just depend on staff. The board and the staff not always speaking the same language. You're gonna have a public works guy comes in and he starts, oh, the ORC and the PVC 1235 69, and you're like, what the heck are we talking about? I mean, I still get it. I come in with some of your public work guys, whoa, slow down. There's nothing wrong. You are not gonna look incompetent, you're not gonna look uneducated, you're not gonna look like you shouldn't be sitting up here on the dais and you say, wait, break this down into really simple terms. I make it so I can understand it, and if you need a crutch, so that the members of the public can all understand it. Because you're members of the public, you got PhDs, you got high school, people who finish elementary school. That's a big difference. You got to make sure the lowest common denominator understands what's going on. Okay, it's the old tin can and a wire. It's how we talk and what happens from here. It gets over there and it's a different message. We'll probably get to this again, but when you're making motions, never make a motion that goes on for 5 or 6 sentences and has 6 or 7 conditions in there. Don't do it. You should have your motions paired and attached to your agenda, you know what the motion's gonna be. Write it up, have staff write it up. If staff thinks there needs to be a motion and needs to say a certain thing, write it up, prep it. The debate should be, is that the language we want to approve? Or do we want to alter that language? And if so, you know, I move that instead of the color red in this motion, that it be blue. Okay, take a vote. Should it be red or should it be blue? Done, done with that. Now, it should be 50 instead of 40, whatever. Tear it apart, piece by piece, make it very, very clear. Makes Samira's job way, way easier. All right. Board constraints. I say volunteer for the most part. How many of you are here for the $100 a month? $1,200 a year, doesn't even pay your gas.
Doesn't pay my water bill.
Now you think it was bad now? There's no hierarchy. Mary's not the queen.
Damn it, Dana. I'm telling everybody I'm queen.
Running the rules of order. She doesn't get to tell you what to do. You're a freelance trustee. You do it the way you think you should do it until you sit in the chair in this room. And then there are certain rules, and I don't know if you've adopted Robert's rules of order. Yes. But if you've adopted them, then you have a problem. That's it, and that's your responsibility. No measurable feedback or evaluation at the point. You get feedback once every 4 years?
Yes.
Once every 4 years.
Well, no, you walk out on the street and you get feedback.
You get feedback the minute you walk out of this room.
But that's not real feedback.
No, it's criticism.
That's a person agreeing or disagreeing with what you did. The only time you get real feedback is when you get an election. Now, if you do something like hold coffees every other week or once a month, and you have a good attendance from a variety of people, or you go to neighborhood meetings, or you go to the Rotary Club or the Lions Club here?
No.
Just Rotary. When is Rotary out here?
Thursdays.
Thursdays.
Oh, it used to be 5. I think they're changing back to noon.
They were noon for a long time.
Yeah, well, they had to change it to COVID, made it
Yeah.
5, and now they're kind of back in here.
Okay.
I'll let you know. As soon as they figure out, I'll let you.
Anyhow, you don't get a whole lot of feedback. And oftentimes it can feel like you're getting beat up in the board meetings, either by your peers because they have a different opinion, or because you're on the losing side, or by a citizen. You should never, ever, ever feel like you're beat up by staff. I'll be real candid again. First meeting I came to, I saw trustees attacking the administrator defending and essentially arguing why the trustee was wrong. Same meeting, trustees picking on the finance person telling the trustees why they were wrong. That does not happen in board. It just does not happen. If you've got issues with something that's going on, it's either an executive session because it's really serious, or it should be before or after a meeting. You don't, it's the old praise in public, condemn in private, right? And something like that. Basically, you don't do it. How does that administrator feel when you just embarrass them in front of a permanent YouTube audience? And when they go look for a job, that's what their employer, because when you hire somebody, another clue, you hire somebody who's an administrator somewhere else, go back and look at their board meetings and see how that administrator acted in that town, or read the minutes or read the newspapers. Bottom line, there should never be disagreements, open hostility between staff, trustees and staff, citizens and trustees, citizens and staff. And then I remember, I'm going to get to dysfunctional meetings again, but citizens coming up and attacking staff verbally. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Whoa, that is not the function. Shareholders don't get to walk into a board meeting at Amazon and say, why didn't you ensure that my package made the one night overnight and it took 3? It just doesn't happen. It's not how you run a business. It's not how you run governance. Okay, and obviously the open meetings report, I'll get a little more into open meetings. 4 of you? required notice. Interesting, start thinking about it now. What is is it three?
Yeah, 3
Three,
requires
okay.
notice. Yeah.
I keep thinking it's your part of the point.
No, quorum.
And 4 is 4, but we, if 3 trustees get together.
So can 2 of you just meet?
Not discuss,
We'll get back to it. Just start thinking about it. What if after you get a really tough meeting, you guys actually start to bond? You start to like each other and say, oh, man, Rob, let's go have a beer. And do that. Staff constraints. This is the world of being a staff. You have multiple bosses if things aren't running right. And they don't just answer the administrator. As soon as one trustee starts talking to a staff member, implying that they're going to tell them how to run things, then they've suddenly got 8 bosses. Because they got the mayor, 6 trustees, and the administrator, and they don't know which one they should really be listening to. You talk about confusing. They're changing agendas. Every time a new board member comes on, policy may change. Sorry, but the state does change things. We put grants out and suddenly, well, gee, we wanted to do this, we couldn't, didn't have the money, let's do this. Resources. There are a lot of things you guys want to do, but the primary resource, money, isn't going to support everything you want to do. We got to figure out how to do it. Mixed messages. They're not, staff doesn't come to the most part. I'll talk to your administrator about that when we finally hire one. I think my personal opinion is some senior staff should come to the board meetings. And then obviously the question is constraint for staff. When you're working together or not working together, your conduct impacts how effective you are. If you spend most of your time bickering over little stuff, how something was said, or what I hope I never see or hear in another board meeting of Paonia is somebody being called out, a citizen being called out by name for something that somebody disagreed with. That, oh, John told you to do this or something else. You talk about citizen input, or you heard from a citizen, but don't call out citizens. It's dangerous. They may be, they may be the voice of the wilderness, but you trust them. So well, John told me this. Well, guess what? There's 300 people out there that hate that idea and are now going to turn on John, who's made his life miserable by pointing him out as the person who told you something. So be very, very, very careful about getting into that kind of scenario. John, we already talked about, how close do you get to the identifying a group, let's say, the 5 or 6 or something else. You just got to be careful. You got to be cognizant of identifying certain segments and attributing certain aspects or attributes to that. You set the tone for the entire organization. If you're dysfunctional, guess what? Tell the rest of them to work together. The guy on the street doesn't like what his boss has to say. Screw you. Listen to you. I'm going to talk to Rick. He knows what's going on better than you do. You set the tone for the whole organization, and not just the organization. Set the tone for the town. If the town is known as kind of this place where people just fight and bicker and get into minutiae details instead of worrying about big things like water supplies and sewer lines, that's what people are going to say. How many of you think there may be quiet whispers about what has the board of trustees been doing rather than keeping up our sewer lines?
it's not whispers. It's actual, get in your face yelling.
And I don't mean that pejoratively toward any of you, because this has been going on for, as I understand, 50 to 70 years in this town. 50 to 70 years. I'm here because it's time for a change. And despite individual perspectives on individual issues, the common issues that move this town forward are pretty straightforward, and they're going to be tough decisions. And you need to be united in that front in talking through it with the public. And it's unfortunate, but you came at a time when you're going to have to shoulder it. And you should be commended for it. It's courage. That's courage. A lot of people never step up to be elected. I ran for elected office twice, lost twice. Now I have a job I actually like. I'm glad I lost both elections. But you guys should be proud. It's great courage to step up and do the things you're doing. Words and action have unintended consequences. So I know that when we were talking about the conduct of the meeting, nobody intended to call out in any kind of a negative connotation that group. Nobody did. But people can pick up on stuff and feel you're picking on me, or you're picking on my friends, or you're picking on the belief system that I believe in. You have to be really careful about choosing your words. Again, discussion and disagreement are part of the process. Not just are they part of the process, they're an encouraged part of the process. It goes back to that 3 branches of government. You have essentially 2 branches, and you're both in this town. You're the legislative branch, and you're the quasi-judicial branch. Now, there's bigger branches over you, there's a judicial branch over you, and then there's certainly the executive, the attorney general, and the police are trained in the executive, even though they answer to the town administrator, who answers to you, which is the legislature. It's a little mishmash, but at the end of the day, getting the points of view, disagreeing. If I were watching a board meeting, if everybody on the board agreed and everything was a 7-0 or 6-0 vote, I'd be worried. I was in Rotary this morning at the Grand Junction, and we have a councilman and the mayor in our club. They said, oh, last night's meeting was great, every vote was 7-0. And I said, oh, something's wrong. No. And because we have, even though it's nonpartisan, we know we have people who are registered one way and registered another way. Not sure, are we going to agree on everything? Although it's certainly possible. There can certainly be, in a good discussion, you can change people's minds. They can come to agreement, you can have concessions and agree somewhere in the middle. So that's what's happening, great, but I certainly work. Is there a problem? 3.5. So the question is, what are the values that drive the board? And this really isn't, I don't want this to be a planning session, but what are the values that drive the board? Why did each of you want to sit on this board? Generally speaking, I surmise it's because I care about the town. I want to make the town better. I want the citizens to be happier. I want it to be cleaner. I want it to have better businesses. You want the town to be a positive place. You've got those common values. You need to sometimes discuss those when you're talking about issues. So when you have a disagreement, sometimes stepping back and saying, well, why are we doing what we're doing? And pulling it all the way back to that big value issue will help you then come back in and reach that result, which is really just a decision. It still may not be a unanimous decision. It's okay if it's not, but at least people understand why you're doing the things you're doing. You know, you've got tough decisions coming up on rate hikes, right? Why are you doing it? These people, and when I say these people, everybody on this side of the dais, like, we can't afford it, it's too expensive. You better have a, you know, if your value is just that Paonia is always going to be the cheapest, most rural place to live in the state of Colorado, that decision is going to run contrary to your values. So you've really got to talk about those values. And if that was any individual's primary philosophical value, and you're voting no on whatever the issue is, it's good to state that that's why. Well, this is my value. This is at the core of why I don't agree with this. It's okay to do that. Okay. Is everyone engaged? Now, when I talk about everyone, I'm not talking about citizens. I'm talking about the board. Is everybody participating? There shouldn't be any silent voices. People all got opinions. Everyone. Are you coming prepared? And I'll talk to Samira and your administrators some more. Your agenda package should be absolutely complete. You should not be looking at an agenda item that says, discuss some possible action on Jones Park. And that's it. What the hell is that? You should have more background and more stuff that you can read through and come to the meeting prepared. And it should include the administrator, a memo saying, hey, these are the issues that are going on in this part. These are the things that we need to address, and I need direction on which way to go. These are my recommendations. These are the alternatives. Here's the pros and cons. You come to a meeting with that kind of information and you come prepared, you've read it, you're gonna make decisions. You're gonna have a discussion. Some of you will like this pro, some of you will overweigh it with a different con. Doesn't matter. At least you can have good discussions and informed decisions. Are you courteous to each other and to citizens? One thing I love and kind of don't like is the informality of meetings. I hear, even when I said, I forgot your name, Rick, Dave, John, Mary, Paige. That's great, it's informal. But is it really courteous? You got to answer the question. I always taught when I address a mayor, it's Madam Mayor or Mayor. If Rick asks me a question, the appropriate protocol is Madam Mayor, through you, trustee, this is the answer. All communications go through. When one trustee is talking to another trustee, Trustee Knudsen, Mayor Backer, you use those titles. When you use those titles among each other, they're going to start viewing you differently. You're professional, I don't say politicians, you're professional board of directors, you're professional directors of a governing agency. You spend $7 million a year. How many companies in this town have $7 million a year? How many companies in Delta County have $7 million a year? 3. How many companies in the state of Colorado? And I'll say this, what percentage of companies and business enterprises in the state of Colorado do $7 million of business a year?
I'd say less than 1%.
It's pretty small. You're a big company. You're professionals. That's why we focus on do the education, be courteous, set the example. So it's just a suggestion. You continue whatever protocols you like. But maybe that's something you want to discuss among yourselves and see how you feel at some point. So are you courteous to each other and to the staff and to citizens, and vice versa? What's that mirror look like coming back to you? I firmly believe when a citizen gets up here and wants to ask a question and says, but Paige, that is disrespectful. It's disrespectful. You put yourself on the line by being elected. You gave up a lot of your personal life to put in the time and energy, to not just be here, to be on recruiting panels, hiring panels. Every one of you did. You have earned a certain level of respect. And if you give it, you should expect it back to some degree. You have to let them know that. If you're going to do that, you have to let each other know if you're going to do that. Are you engaged? Come to the meetings, stay for the meetings, participate in the meetings. I'm thrilled that we had this turn. Last time I was here, I think we had 2 or 3. If there's a meeting, it's important. It's important. I'm not here to waste your time, and if you feel I am, we'll get a discussion. Say, yeah, move on. We'll be saying a little quicker. There. The impacts of dysfunction. Sweet.
You stole my ringtone.
That's my brother-in-law. I actually like my brother-in-law. All right, sorry. I apologize for that. So what are the impacts of dysfunctional and discord? We've talked a little bit about it, but it's a lack of productivity. Trustee, we talked about we don't make decisions.
It takes forever to make a decision.
It shouldn't take forever for decisions. Your expectations, and you should make this clear when you hire an administrator. When we come to a meeting, if you have an item, the administrator puts an item on the agenda, or puts an item on the agenda for one of you or for the mayor, I don't know what your agenda process is. It needs to be clear, all the information needs to be there that you can make decisions from. Do not tolerate an agenda item that like I just talked about before. Discuss possible action on the park. That's nonsense. You've got to have the information. And the flip side of that is you got to be prepared. And if you do that, you're going to be able to make decisions. You're going to be able to make decisions.
Could I interject?
Yes.
That possibly would be the most critical thing for this board, that we could have complete information. Not that we make the decision before we get here, because I like hearing varied points of view. And I often change my mind because I heard something from one of you guys that it changed my view. But if I have the basis here, I'm not gonna have to spend 15 minutes listening to people explain the issue and then explain the alternatives. And that to me is probably the best thing that we could possibly do for this board.
So to that point, when you hire an administrator, that needs to be a very, very clear expectation of your administrator and your clerk. And I'll work with them, and the Clerks Association will work with them. You can certainly you can certainly make it too big and too cumbersome. That's not the goal. But you know, the way you simplify meetings, consent agenda. You can put every single item on the consent agenda, except for hearings. And then at the beginning of the consent agenda, if somebody says, no, I don't want to talk about that, you pull it from consent. Because the reality is, how do you know what a particular person wants to talk about or not want to talk about? You know, now when there's discussion, possible action, you can't put that in consent. But, you know, approve a bill, you know, approve a contract, that you can consent. You can always pull it before you approve the consent agenda. Okay, and anybody can prove it, pull it for any particular reason. So things don't get done.
Could I stop you right there?
Yes.
Anybody, so I don't know if we vote on pulling things from the consent agenda, but you're saying, does it have to be voted on to pull it, or can a trustee simply ask?
Your rules, I've seen it done both ways. I've seen where the mayor will simply say, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the mayor's agenda. Yes,
Yeah,
or is it
mayor.
clerk's?
Yeah.
But it's the mayor's agenda. So it's her discretion. I would suggest that if one person wants an item pulled, you pull
That's why I wanted to stop and get that discussion, because we tend to vote whether it should come off the consent agenda. And if the whole agenda packet was on the consent agenda, I would say you get to just pull. You don't have to.
I don't think we're ever gonna.
Right.
it. Yeah,
But we've been voting on it, and I just don't know if that's necessary to vote on it. And again, I don't know, if it's a Robert's rule thing.
tell you how to run your government.
Right.
It's technically the agenda belongs to the mayor. And the mayor presides over the meeting.
And there's not a Robert's rule about consent agenda withdrawal.
It's not that I'm aware of,
Okay.
but I am not.
Yeah, not aware of any of the chart, not that I know of this. Okay, that was just a distinction.
And candidly, if one trustee, you know, Dave starts pulling every single thing for 6 or 7 meetings straight, the mayor should be talking with the trustee. And that's their discussion. It shouldn't be, you know, 5, here we go again. That's not productive. And then you should only pull things that are really of personal interest. And the interesting thing, when you're dysfunctional, you can't make decisions, you should get to make decisions. You come up and you're 3-3, move forward, don't move through. And the mayor gets to make the decisions. Why would you do that? You guys are elected. Come up and figure out whether 4 of you can agree one way or another. Don't get stuck in the mud and it's 3-3 all the time. Financial consequences. You know, all I gotta do is say, how much is it gonna cost us to replace water pipes and infiltration galleries? Because things didn't get done over 50 or 70 years. You gotta identify the issues, address the issues, and make decisions on the issues. The other is people don't want to do business. So I've touched on this. If you're dysfunctional, and that's what people see on YouTube, they're not going to want to come and be administrators. They're not going to want to come and be department heads. They're not going to want to come and set up businesses in your town.
right, the last couple of elections, we've not had contested elections. It's hard to get people to stand up and run for office in this town.
Yeah, the last election, yeah.
Yeah. And that, to me, is a sign of a serious defect in the city government.
I'll bet you next time people run.
Yeah,
But let's make sure that if that happens, people run for the right reasons.
yeah,
The reasons people should run for government is because they believe things need attention and they can do a better job than somebody else. The wrong reason to run for government is, I want a skate park over there and I'm gonna get on this board so I can get a skate park.
yeah.
I don't know anything about it. I don't know what tax, I don't know economic development or housing, I don't care about all that stuff. I just want the skate park. That is absolutely the wrong reason to do it. I would candidly encourage everyone, it's $100 a month you're making. I would encourage you, when you meet with the public, to say, run against me, run against somebody else. Not to try to get rid of somebody, but simply if you think you have ideas of how to help guide the community, run for office, get involved.
Dana, you should give this seminar to the candidates or potential
I
candidates.
had actually heard that Leslie invited them.
Right,
And I was hoping they would be here.
Yeah.
I can tell you that in multiple jurisdictions that I've worked in, when a candidate announced and was going to be on the ballot, we had a mandatory orientation. And we taught them how the government worked for that jurisdiction. And we did it so they wouldn't just go bad mouthing people without knowing what was going on, and then get into office and be like, oh, well, I guess I can't do anything about that. And then all the people who elected them were like, well, I thought you were gonna do something like this. Well, no, but that's the way it's supposed to run. I didn't know what I was talking about. That's just bad. That puts egg on everybody's face. So, yeah, I would encourage it. And you've got this presentation, it'll be left with you. If you want to talk to people and say, this is the role, you should educate the public what your role is. If they're talking about, oh, this pothole isn't getting done, or it's not done right, or the swing set is crooked, so you know what, I'll pass that on, but do you know what the role of a trustee is? And educate the public as much as you're being educated, or maybe redundantly lectured at. I'm not sure which is the case, and I hope it's not that. And the other thing is, sometimes it costs you more to get people to come. And a perfect example, you had to increase what you were going to pay administrator. You may have that with businesses. You know, what does it take if somebody, you know, you got to pull a concrete company, a cement company out of Delta to come out here? Are they going to charge you more because they think it's risky doing business, and they're going to increase the rate because they have a risk in coming out here? I don't know. It's like a public embarrassment and loss of confidence. People just give up. You know what? I got mine. I'm just going to pay attention to what I'm going to do, because they don't get anything done. And when they do, it just gets screwed up. So I'm just going to protect my little world, the boundaries of my home, my ranch, my business, and they just don't care. Apathy will kill a town just as quickly as, maybe not just as quickly, as not doing anything for 70 years on infrastructure, but it'll do it. And you drive away the best in the players. You know, like I said, a good administrator who might be looking, I would love to go to a small town, Paone's got this nice feel, I'd love to be there, but I could not work in that environment. They'll drive away, because they're the ones that'll look, they're the ones that'll check. So you really gotta be paying attention to that. This John Nehemiah was a management guy, who actually happened to be a lawyer too. Oh, I didn't mention that I'm a lawyer too, because I didn't want you to hang out. Sorry. But the key thing to be an effective board, you're able to address the issues, the team. You don't hide them. You don't go out in public and say, yeah, I'm not going to bring that up because everybody else on the board is a bunch of idiots. They won't do anything. You don't do that. You bring them up and you talk to each other. You're willing to address the difficult issues. Never more true than now. You know, this is kind of the shining moment for the board and the town. You can really do a kind of 180 and get through this current crisis and plan long-term, you will really make a mark on making this town something special for the next 50 or 100 years. And the other thing that's effective is you have to have a successful relationship with professional staff. When the meetings I attended since I first started here, their relationship was not good. It was just, there was antagonism. It was, you could cut it with a knife. And then it kind of went both ways. You shouldn't have that. And then you shouldn't have that from the moment you hire somebody. You shouldn't have it a year from when you hire somebody. You shouldn't have it 5 years from when you hire somebody. And all it really takes is good communication. So how do you move forward? One thing, assume good intention. And that's difficult. And I'm not to pick on Beige and John, but, you know, assume that John didn't really want to pick on somebody. And John, when Paige has something to say, assume she's not lashing out at you personally. She's lashing out at what she feels is an important issue.
I would like to just add, I was lashing out at the whole table.
Okay. And me.
Just say no.
I think me a little bit.
No,
too,
not
that's
just
okay.
John, everybody was agreeing, and that I was the outlier that spoke up.
And it's okay to do that. But always assume good intention, that there shouldn't be anything personal. You know, it's interesting, we'll talk maybe a little bit about DOLA grants, but one of the things we will do, in fact, with your grant you have for the Doris line, we will meet in Denver in a week and a half, the regional managers, and we will beat the hell out of each other's projects. I have 7 other regional managers and 3 other regional assistants who will tell me your project stinks. And there's no way that should be funded. They should have taken care of business. Why can't they pay for it themselves? And I mean, literally, people cry in the meeting. It's brutal. Oh. But then at the end of it, we walk away and we're weird. And we're all still friends. And we realize that the reason we're doing that is to make your project even stronger. And you know, there's some adage about the wheat coming from China, whatever. But the reality is the best projects do naturally shine in that environment. And they come to the top, and those are the ones that get funded. I do think they'll get funded, so no promises, but so that's the good intentions. It's not personal. Listen more than you talk. If you're the one that always has to say something on an item, you should be stepping back and saying, how come I'm doing so much talking? And what did other people have to say about this? And if you're doing more listening, no talking, you should similarly say, is there a reason I'm not talking? Or should I be saying something? Find common ground. We talked about respectful posture, tone, body language. Only 85% of communication is nonverbal. 85%. So you may be saying all the right things, but your body posture and tone may be saying something totally different. You've got to be in tune with that, because that's what other people are perceiving, particularly when they're looking at you on a recorded video. They don't get the fine things that they see when they're here in person. And I suspect you have a good number of citizens, probably not 1,500, but you probably got 100 or so that actually watch you on Zoom or afterwards on a recorded meeting. So be very, very careful with that. Make your meetings productive. We've talked about that. We've given you and Samara and the new administrator when you hire one some tips. And remember, everything you say and do, once that little thing goes on the top, is recorded. For posterity. It will be there after you're gone. And not just gone from this room, but gone from this earth. It will be there for your children, your children's children, your relatives, and generations from now will look back at how was this board of trustees and what did they do to move our town forward and how did they act with each other and with the community. It's all there for posterity. Remember. And it reflects not just on you, but the town. And the town is what matters. None of us matter. I don't matter. I retire, somebody else will come in behind me. It doesn't matter. What matters is the things that we do, the things that we get done. Use the administrator. as a resource, and the other staff, be careful with the, and other staff. Try to do that through the administrator. Using this to help you do what you want to do and keep you looking good while they do it. The reality is, a good administrator gives all the credit to the trustee and the staff, and never takes credit for themselves. Never. They didn't do it. The administrator didn't get the grant, didn't replace the water pipes, didn't build a new park structure. They helped coordinate and marshal the resources and the staff to ensure that your philosophy and that your principles got carried through to an end product. It's a team that did it. And the only team that really matters is you guys, because you're the only ones the public has input on. So at the end of the day, I always view, and I know the peers that I have in the profession, their job is to make the electeds look good, as long as the electeds were trying to do the right thing for the right reasons. Where you're going to cross lines, where you want to do the wrong thing, even if it's for the right reasons, or the right thing the wrong way. And that can't be done either. By clear and direct messaging, I'll say there were a lot of meetings that I came out and, what did they ask the person to do? I'm not quite sure. Subsequent meeting, it would be clear. We asked you to do this. No, you asked me to do this. It should be very clear. Very clear. And I think Samira can help you with that when there's a potential for a disagreement. There's nothing wrong with Samira asking for clarification. Because if she didn't get it while she was sitting through the meeting, even though you don't do minutes, right? Okay, so she's doing minutes, and even though she can go back and look at the recording and spend her evenings doing that instead of watching basketball all the time. Just asking you for very clear, what was it that you expect? There's nothing wrong with that, and the administrator should likewise do the same thing. Goals and setting priorities. You guys had a planning session, I'll call it that. I wasn't there, we went through stuff, but there are certain constants for government: safety, infrastructure, and the economy. What's your current priority? Infrastructure. See, there's a common board. You guys are common infrastructure. But those are the constants. Those are the things you deal with. Your board goals should challenge the process. You should challenge it. This is the way it's always been done. Can we do it differently? Can you do it better? Look for opportunities. Get a shared vision. We went through that process. I haven't seen the end product of that yet. But John, stretch.
My apologies, I have to go get infused. It's loaded from my man, let me tell you.
Okay.
But thank you very much, Dana. This is really informative, and I intend to watch the rest of it. However you can, it's great to see everybody.
It's good to see
So
you
good.
here.
I'm on my way.
Thank you very much. I'll try to make the next part even more lively than this. Stay tuned.
Bye-bye.
Full water, please.
You want to take a quick break and stretch legs?
A few minutes.
Bathroom, water?
Back.
Yeah, let's take a quick break.
Oh. We didn't pair our owls.
Guess who needs a new knee?
Oh, you? Oh, sorry, but yes,
Oh, yeah.
it really.
Yeah,
That's something we need to remember in the meetings, the pair the owls.
Well, and I wonder if they ever got repaired, just when the master planning group came in the other day.
Yeah, they did. Ruben and I were working on trying to figure out the speakers. One of them paired them again. But I wondered when we shut the Zoom off, if they compare and yet
Probably,
compare.
if he has it on his phone, I need to put the app on my phone too, so I can do it for these meetings so that I don't have.
So yeah, so I'm looking at Dana, and he's like, he's so small up there. What's wrong with Dana? He's so small. No.
Yeah, so I'll talk to Ruben about that tomorrow, but I told me that I was gonna need to download it on my phone too. So much has been going on that I
with our climate. So, because I know it's so.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of like, I never lived that kind of life. It's here, I shouldn't even be, but.
Therapy here is really good.
Like, I get going to. It was good to see John.
I know, oh my gosh, aside from going to doctors, but it's the first time he's been out of the house since he was in the hospital.
I bet.
Well, I was gonna say, I know it's the first time I've seen him in the flesh.
Oh.
Since before he was in the hospital.
But I had like.
I know, I've done.
Yeah. I don't cross brand. I was just talking about that today, I cross brand, like, you know, every 4 months when I'm really hungry, and I open a Dawn's. The rest of the time, I stop at my grandkids and they're on the way out of town. And then come in, yeah, so.
Yeah, I just got this yesterday, went. Okay, I guess I'm.
I'm glad you haven't surgery, but I'm glad it's gonna.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to be. Yeah. Well, I don't think we should.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, you're like me.
Thank you. That was awfully nice of you. Well, just be nice. We try.
So how are you, how much are you walking now?
I can walk from my house to therapy. I can walk to the post
I
office.
really find it
I'm
better.
basically on my feet most of the day.
Oh, some people are like that.
Wonderful,
And
absolutely wonderful.
my therapist said that next week should be my last week that she has to consult with my surgeon. He said, you've got.
So I'm more likely to actually risk.
Oh my God, that is
In the community.
wonderful.
But it's coming at some cost,
Okay.
very painful.
Um,
I can't take anything but Tylenol, so.
Right.
And there are days. I had a day a week, 2 weeks ago. And it was so painful, I couldn't do anything. She just did massage. I couldn't exercise at all.
Yeah.
And she said, you'll get these. And I was like, God, I just went way downhill. You know, I was riding a bike 2 days ago. And the discouragement was tough, you know, and she encouraged me. She's done really well.
I was gonna tell you, Dan, so I had.
It's hard, it's psychologically hard.
What's that?
Well, do you know Laura Bauer?
I went from being not very.
Oh, really, but she was the.
And that's really hard, independent. That sucked.
Yeah.
I think she's doing about your
Scared
brain,
myself.
though. She's helping a grandchildren right now with their.
That was pretty serious.
But anyways.
But I get off the monitor tomorrow.
You're saying, can I share with her? But she was doing that. when she
Send
was
it away and
training.
tell me what's wrong with my heart, or if there's.
Oh, how long was it on the monitor?
30 days.
Oh, wow.
29 days.
Oh, wow.
So I got that.
Well, they can't diagnose it. And that's the problem.
Oh,
It doesn't, it looks like AFib and then it doesn't look like AFib.
no.
And then it's extreme rapid heartbeat.
Yeah.
And I wasn't pumping any blood at all, or very little, almost to the point to make me pass out.
Yeah.
If I would sit up, I'd pass out.
Yeah.
So, and I've never had any heart issues, ever before.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary.
Good dog, yeah. It would be very scary. All right.
I'm not bulletproof anymore. I'm just bullet resistant.
You're only Kevlar, you're not Kevlar with steel plates.
It kind of gave me a wake up call. Yeah, I'm taking better care of myself. On the flip side, my A1C I had done yesterday, it's 6.1. 7 is considered very normal. And it's lower than 6. I'm doing really well. The potential damage to my eyes, to my heart, is pretty good. As long as I can.
Oh, God, that's so wonderful.
Yeah, I've been struggling with it. It was as high as almost 9, not more than 2 months ago. I had to get it down to 8 to get my surgery. And I struggled with it, I really did. They put me on Trulicity, which really helped. But I can't afford $1,000 in pain. You know?
Yeah.
I just can't.
I feel don't understand.
I mean, after a couple of weeks.
I know, they walk and see you coming.
Just get the money out,
I know.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
But hopefully they're gonna, the,
Grassroots side.
FDA is supposed to crack down on giving out Trulicity and Ozempic, those drugs for weight loss. Because people are taking them for weight loss.
Yeah.
They can lose up to 40 pounds without much struggle. Part of the thing is it keeps food in your stomach longer. It changes your sugar. Metabolism. It's a lot.
So I'm all set, aren't you?
We're all set.
How are you?
How many phones do you have?
This is a remote.
The one got those
I
two.
have two.
Oh, keep it up with one is bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing on there was encourage people, empower them. When you just dictate to people, they follow along like sheep. When you empower them, they help you find answers. Your challenge is to sort out the goals and priorities that you have. We talked about those. When you have disagreements, they're generally more than just the one issue that's underlying it. It's the fundamental core values and principles that you share. Get to what those common things are. If you want to have a workshop where you talk about those higher things, and I don't know, did you talk about those higher values and principles that you're planning?
Yeah, we've never done that.
Sure we did, we voted on this.
No, tried, never got there.
Yeah. So, at some point, maybe now's not the time with all the stuff going on with the capital projects. We're gonna get to it, I always hate this, we get to it and we get redundant and stuff, but I like to just talk, think about things. The reality is, you guide everything that happens in town with those overarching principles. When you do that, those principles feed into your strategic vision and your strategic plan. Those feed into your capital improvement plan. Those feed into your budget. When it comes budget time or project time, or you want to be thinking about, should we do this or shouldn't we do this? The real question isn't, should we do this or shouldn't we do this? Or should we budget this or budget that? It's, how does this decision fit into that strategic vision? Does it move us forward to the strategic vision? Does it stagnate us? Or does it move us away? Never do something that moves you away from the strategic vision, period. Preferably, you're only doing things that move you forward in your strategic vision. Otherwise, you never get there. All right? Okay, I'm thinking that's some light bulb.
Yeah, there's a big light bulb that went on. That's a deep thought.
It is, but that's the problem. You come down to budget every year, and you're dealing with minutia. You're dealing with individual little pieces, and not how do those pieces fit together to move us forward. And it may be, okay, it's gonna move us forward because we're replacing 700 feet of pipe. Okay, but why? Why are we doing it? Where does that fit in that vision? Are we doing it sufficiently? Because, we're thinking we might extend past that 700 feet. Are we putting the right kind of pipe in, the right kind of connections? Are we building that infrastructure? Or are we just building what we got? Basically, we've got to have that big vision. And this kind of highlights it. You've got the mission, the guiding principles, the strategic vision, the plan, the long-term financial planning. And I haven't looked in depth in your budget, but I think you look 1 year out. Yeah. This is what we predict next year's revenue is going to be.
Yeah.
You should have a minimum 5-year projection of revenues. Some of my jurisdictions had 20-year projection of revenues. Why is that important? Because you pay salaries. What do you do with salaries almost every year? You give a cost of living increase. So you can certainly project your expenses out 5, 10, 20 years. If you would do a good financial analysis, and you can even do it through CML or CCI or work with Delta County or work with CMU and their fiscal people, will give you the same information. At some point, when you're projecting expenditures and you got revenue and your projections go like this and your expenditures cross projected revenue line 5 years out, you better be planning now on how to keep that from happening, not waiting 5 years. That's why you gotta do those kind of projections, okay? So that's why you do the long-term planning where it all fits in. These are some of the tools you've got. Your master plan, comp plan, I think we've funded some of those.
Yeah.
You administrative, you got the 3 mile plan. You, I hope, have annexation policies. You may or may not be dealing with them with some of the water companies that you've got agreements or don't have agreements with. Governmental agreements, I don't think you have any planned.
We do, we're up.
Delta County.
You have a PUD, okay,
Oh, no, not a plan, no P.
just IGA.
Just like in Delta County.
I'm not sure if you have any subdivision regulations.
Yeah, we have subdivision.
Okay.
Isn't the Riverbank subdivision still a PUD? Because it was.
It's a small, oh God, I can't remember which one it is.
In PUD more than just housing.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's
Oh,
not, it's
no,
just
not.
housing.
No, it's just housing, it's a subdivision.
That's changed since they put it forth then.
The building codes, incentives, programs, that may be citizen incentives programs to get involved in community activities, it may be staffing incentives and programs, it may be programs among themselves. And here we go, I don't have accessibility on here, it's an older slide. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. How are you bringing people together?
Can I speak to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
We just had a really good session last week, Thursday. And there were 60 people in this room talking about what they want to see in the general plan. And we had the same thing that Mary organized last summer, where on a Saturday in the summer, 50 people showed up. And in the afternoon, after lunch, 55 were there. So we've had, in like the crowd we had on Thursday night, what was really neat about it is there were kids in the audience. Parents brought kids. It was younger generations. It wasn't, like the only people who are serving on town boards, it seems, are those of us that are what I call Q-tips, gray hair, retired, But what was nice about seeing that is we see that younger generation, and Thomas, to his credit, had told everyone, hey, how many of you live in Paonia? Raise your hands. How many of you have been here longer than a year? Keep your hands up. You're qualified to go for town council. We have, we have a vacant seat right now. It's that kind of stuff that I think I'd like to see the board grow more. The problem we have is that the time commitments of being on this board throw a lot of people away. Turn it off. We call a lot of special meetings. We call a lot of training sessions. And people that have families just can't keep up with it, full-time jobs. That's a
Pre-reading, I mean, just preparing for.
yeah, packets that are 300 pages because of someone who put in 150 page BLM document.
No, I was just laughing, because I was complaining about the length of the package, and then I get.
It was my fault.
But it's fine. It's just, but you gotta read it all, you have to come prepared.
The thing is that this job honestly is probably a 20-hour-a-week job. And a lot of times it's 40 and 50 hours a week. And that, if you're working for a living, that's impossible. It's why I got off the board before.
Yeah.
I would rush home from Aspen and get here, no dinner, and sit through a 4-hour meeting. And it was extremely difficult at times. It's hard to keep your temper when you're starving to death and you're already tired, because at 4:30, I gotta get up and go back. And that really made it hard for me. And it wasn't the same kind of dysfunction. It was more of a 3-3, us against them, and the old timers and the newcomers. That was the dichotomy there. Now it's a different board. I think we're making progress. I'm very proud that we've made as much progress, but I sure would like to see the meetings become more productive, because that's my major frustration. It takes us usually 3 to 5 meetings to get a
decision made on one item.
Yes.
It's been on the agenda for 4 meetings in a row.
Yeah, and it drives me nuts.
And I'll be candid, I don't know if it's here, I don't even know how to slide on it. we are going to discuss making community cuts. Yeah, because it just can't keep going on.
No.
It can't. But it also can't do some other things that be easy to do, but you can't do it, right? So, hold me accountable to come back to making those meetings better. The other thing in planning is resiliency. Resiliency is the big term. Resiliency, we're coming out with millions of dollars for projects that are focused on resiliency. What is resiliency? And I'm still trying to figure out the answer. And a lot of people are. I have a project in Sea Ridge. They have a creek that runs through town. Getting ready to wipe out bridge. And it's a bridge that goes to the school. Bridge already doesn't support buses, doesn't support CDOT equipment. They're getting ready to potentially open up a development down the road. Yep. Let's replace that bridge. It's going to help make that community resilient, right? It will help. So I asked the people that are running the resiliency program, hey, isn't this a perfect fit? Well, they have to prove it reduces greenhouse gas.
Well, it would reduce greenhouse gas because they wouldn't have to build so much new stuff if you replace this bridge.
Trust me, we're going to find a way to justify it. This is where I say, come work with me on a project. We're going to justify that it reduces greenhouse gas. The school buses don't have to take a long route. We're going to justify it to fit into that program because it's the right thing to do. That's actually, I'm passionate about this stuff. But really identify the vulnerabilities. What do you think your big vulnerabilities are? Just throw them out.
It's the water system, it's the mountain that doesn't get enough snow.
Okay, so water.
Yeah.
Water, you're subject to drought.
Drought.
Okay. What else?
Wildfires.
Wildfire.
We're in deep trouble with our sewer system.
Yeah.
Okay, your infrastructure.
Regulations have changed.
Yeah.
And we haven't really done the maintenance that we needed to have it done. And we need to plan for the next stage. And the engineering firm is pushing us towards a tertiary treatment plant. And we're talking $8 million. And there are other solutions that will work, maybe cheaper.
Yeah.
But we also have to talk about, we need to look at these things on a 25-year plan. And we haven't at all. Usually we're looking 3 months in advance, and we make payroll in 3 months. But we haven't done that. When I was on the board before, that was a problem. Are we gonna make payroll in 90 days?
Luckily, we don't have that problem.
No, we
Thank
do not
God.
have that problem anymore.
Yeah.
Well, your auditors came out with a pretty interesting presentation when they looked at our different audits over the years, and they said that, essentially the town is pretty healthy compared to a lot of other communities and what we've set aside in reserves. So that's been solid. What has not been solid is actually how clear we are as a board about what that budget actually says. What priorities we have established during the budget process in order to make sure that those happen during that year. And whether the department heads feel like they can go ahead with a project because it's in the budget. That isn't clear, and all those things.
Yeah,
It's
but
the tail wagging the dog.
but also, mainly it's infrastructure, because we still have streets and stuff. But the other thing is, we have an aging population. Do we have what it takes to maintain an aging population? I keep hearing more and more people who move down to Junction, move down to Hill, because we don't have the medical infrastructure to be able to support an aging population. Do we have streets and stuff that people can walk along without tripping and falling and dying?
Sidewalks.
Yeah.
Curb and gutter.
Yeah.
Water
Same
drain.
thing, and protecting ourselves from climate change. I mean, just even in this town, shade trees and amenability for being able to stay cool, walking down the street, stuff like that. Bike lanes, so that people are biking instead of driving cars, stuff like that.
The neat thing is this all ties into that strategic plan.
Mhm.
Whenever I facilitate a strategic plan, I say, we're looking 20 years.
Yeah.
Minimum 20-year strategic plan. And you need to revisit that strategic plan every 5 years like clockwork. And the strategic plan feeds into your annual goals, which feeds into your CIP, which feeds into your budget. It's a simple process. It's hard getting started. It is work.
It's a lot of work.
Well, once you get the first one done, it's a lot easier.
Yeah,
Well, going back to resiliency, one of the major insurance companies, I will name them by name, it's Nationwide. Nationwide is on your side. They refuse to do fire. They refuse to do homeowner insurance and paying it now. They're backing out because of fire danger.
Yep.
So if you want to find out about resiliency, look at what the insurance companies are insuring and what they're not insuring.
You have a fire district.
Pardon me?
We have a,
Fire
yes,
district.
Yeah.
yes, it's a volunteer department,
right.
but we have the infrastructure, our fire hydrants, we have a fire hydrant on a 2-inch line.
Yeah.
We have fire hydrants.
We have
that are not-
several that don't
in
have
service.
pressure.
And how often are they
Up
tested?
in
Well,
Panorama.
they're tested annually. They go out and test.
They get drained every year and then they pressure test.
Well, and they've got, we have key fire hydrants that do have the pressure
Right.
things on them so that they're monitored all the time too. I mean, we're slowly getting there because we didn't have those 2 years ago and now we do.
And we have entire subdivisions with no fire protection.
I can tell you that working with Crawford, 2 projects going on in Crawford. And one is specifically related to capacity on water.
Yeah.
They have 1 tank. Guess what? We're building a second tank for Crawford.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because when they look at their maximum daily drawdown in summer,
It's almost the whole thing.
if they were to get a fire,
They'd be-
Can't do it.
toast.
Yeah.
And if Crawford Lake Pond Reservoir was drawn down, there goes all the way to Blue Mesa, which that may be drawn down. Yeah, that's
Well,
not.
last year it was. We look at fire protection and fire insurance. Everybody in this town pays higher fire insurance because we have parts of the town that are not up to capacity. And there are parts of the town within the fire district that are not defendable. We have wildfire problems. All of this adds to our fire insurance problems. And it costs everybody, every month, money. Every year, all the time. It's horrendous.
You see how many issues there really are
Mhm.
facing
Yeah.
the town. Now, those aren't issues that an administrator can decide, this is what I'm gonna work on.
Right,
You have to decide,
yes,
these are the priorities.
yes.
And you know, I just heard this yesterday or the day before. You heard the adage about things are so big, how do you eat an elephant?
Bite at a time.
Nope. You cut it up and you pass it out to people. So, you know, if there's issues like that, and you've got somebody who knows a lot about the fire district, you say, you know what, why don't, Trustee Knudsen, why don't you go research the ISO rating and the fire district and how we can potentially get cheaper insurance rates for our folks? Bring that back to the board. And if somebody else knows things about a plant or greenhouse gas, whatever, you divvy it up and you each become experts in an area, you bring it back, you inform each other, and then you make decisions based on your overarching philosophical goals of what you want for the town. It's not impossible. An administrator could never do it. Never. That's way too much. I got too much stuff.
Well, the other thing that happens too is the tail wags the dog, because we don't clearly say, here's our 5 priorities. And then we have a board meeting and someone's hair is on fire or something. And then we go for whatever that is without thinking about, wait a minute, how does that fit into the 5 we've already decided?
If it doesn't move you forward towards the goal, don't do it.
We've got to get out of crisis management
Whack 'em
position.
all.
Yeah, because that's where we are now. And we always have been since I've lived in town.
So man, I so badly wanted to get how to do better meetings, but I'm trying to pace myself. I think I have a slide on it. No, we're still gonna get to it. Plan for the unplannable sounds silly, right? But think of things that are just, what's the impact of the closure of 133 under town?
Huge.
It's
huge. They can't get to work.
We can't get
well,
an
we're getting
ambulance.
there.
We
I know
can't get
they
an
are.
ambulance to the mine. What if they have a disaster at the mine? What if they just get a
Well,
guy that
and
breaks his
right,
back?
yeah. Well, and the other thing is, now with the rock slide on the other side of the corner, we can't get people from the other
they
side, so
can't
that Somerset is in real
They're so
bad
protected.
shape.
Not to be isolationist, but you're not Somerset.
Thank God.
You're not the line. What's the impact on Paley?
Our workers can't get to them.
So what's
They
the impact?
can't. Loss of wages. loss
Are
of
they losing their
wages.
wages?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they're losing their
still
wages.
working.
I don't know.
They're going up and around.
Well, just people that go to Glenwood and
Yeah.
And our-
Carbondale for
We have a
doctors,
large
so
working
they're just gonna have
population
to
that
go
travels
the other
to the Roaring Fork Valley.
They're not- they're gonna
And
have a
that's,
long
they
drive.
can't go.
Yeah, and shopping.
I did it for 25 years.
So what's the town doing?
The town has very little to do. We can't.
But you don't even know. You don't even know. You're drawing anecdotally.
Well, we
Right?
did get, Corey is working with Delta County. Remember, we got an email that.
Well, he's working on different things, on the flooding thing.
I've got a
But also
suggestion,
with the,
if we can get the National Guard to come with one of their bridge units and flip it over.
Yeah.
Corps of Engineers, right?
Exactly, that's what they do.
I mean, they can set one of those up in and out.
It's state, call up the governor.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to detract, because you're not gonna solve that issue.
No.
But the reality is, I would suggest you have way more impacts on that. People travel 133 all the time,
Yeah,
and often stop by in Paonia,
yes, they do.
and eat, buy, stay,
Yeah.
gone.
yeah,
You're losing tax revenue.
And this may not be fixed until July or August.
What happens to your festivals?
Yeah.
What happens to other stuff? They're gonna.
They've got to do a temporary.
So, and again, I don't mean to push you to say, go figure out this immediate solution. What I'm saying is, that's unplannable. Sorry.
We've got, yeah, we need to deal with all that.
Who would have planned for 133 being wiped out?
Nobody.
Who would have planned for a slide on McClure Pass to shut that down?
Well, that's pretty common.
Yeah.
But you've got to plan for those
Yeah.
things. What happened? Look at what happened to Glenwood last year.
Mhm.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
shut down for a month and a half. And that impacted not just Glenwood, not just Rifle, Newcastle, Silk, impacted Meeker, Craig, Steamboat,
It
Hayden.
impacted us. We couldn't get groceries here. We didn't get
Yeah.
gasoline delivered.
So
It was a
you
major problem.
plan for the unplanned. Anything that you don't think is gonna happen, it's gonna happen sooner or later. Okay? Think regionally, not just to the edge of the town. You know, edge of the town defines who can vote for you, but doesn't define certain towns, because your town encompasses a bigger geographic area to include Delta County. All right. Oh, look, meetings. Agenda. You gotta have a firm agenda. I think we beat that enough. And again, I think Samira is gonna get the training from the Municipal Clerks Association. It's gonna be tremendous. I have every confidence she's on the right track. She's going to help you run better meetings by making sure there's more clarity. It's part of it. You already get copies of the meetings, backup material on the issues we talked about. You know, Dave, you talked about 150 pages of stuff. If it's 150 pages, it's 150 pages. And it is what it is. You'll do the best to get through it, 2 weeks, and that's all you can do. I just knew another trustee would ask for it.
Which was the one that complained about all the pages.
We just have fun with it. So again, all this stuff should be provided to you. And I would suggest if it's provided to you, it should be provided to the public. So it should be available in a downloadable PDF to the public. You don't need to print out a million copies and waste the paper here at the meetings. You should be able to sit at home and look at the same material you're looking at. And preferably, I don't know what your agenda deadlines are. Preferably, your agenda deadline for a draft agenda is 1 week prior to the meeting.
That's the Wednesday before the meeting on Tuesday.
Yes.
So it's pretty
Wednesday.
close. It's
You have-
days.
Okay, and that's your draft. And then mayor has time to go over it, the clerk has time to go over it, then talk to the department heads and the administrator, make sure the appropriate backup material is in there. And that should be out to you no later than 48 hours ahead.
Oh, yeah, we try and get out Friday before the meeting.
And if we get the draft, you can pretty much get 90% of the information done. And then if you read the final, you could just polish it.
Yeah.
And if there's information that you think should be in there, don't hesitate. Don't stop you from calling Samira, the administrator, and say, hey, can you make sure there's information on XYZ for that agenda item if you have it?
Or tell me where to find it.
Yeah.
You'll know.
Well,
But
there's
there's-
a lot of stuff that they're aware of, and they'll be like, wasn't there a study? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'll go look for it.
Or you guys can send it,
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, so you've been busy. You didn't get a chance to review your package of these scenarios. I don't suppose we can move that little window, can we?
I was just wondering if I could do it without throwing you off.
There we go.
Oh, there.
You, You didn't get a chance to review the packet. There's a matter coming up that requires a vote. What do? A, B, or C, or A, and A. Apparently they reformed each other. A1, A2, or A3.
I don't like any of those alternatives.
Why not?
They're, well, the first one is not appropriate whatsoever.
Yeah.
Contacting staff, you're adding to their burden on a busy day, because that's meeting day and it's always.
It's too much of a crunch.
Right, and to email the other board and commission members,
no.
that's a no-no.
Yeah.
That's the meeting
Conducting
problem.
public business.
Yeah.
So what do?
I think.
I think you declare in a meeting that you haven't, I don't have enough information to vote on this, I have to abstain.
Or you damn well get it done, find 3 hours to do it.
Or you come to the meeting and you listen to the discussion and you base your opinion upon what was discussed in the meeting. But
Should you put off a decision because you haven't had time to read the materials?
If one board member hasn't had time?
If it's one board member, no. No,
I think, yeah, an abstention would be more
yeah,
appropriate
that's
than
an
that.
appropriate place for abstention.
But I think if everybody didn't have time, then.
Okay,
Sometimes things are added on the day of the meeting to the packet.
Yeah.
And that's not cool, because we have a bunch of stuff going on Tuesday. We're trying to study, we're trying to get ready for the meeting, and we didn't check our email to find out that something was sent out at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we come to the meeting.
Since our system seems to be a little jammed right now, I can't access my town email right now. So,
Have you not taken those tests?
oh yes, I've taken those tests. And I did,
No.
I did everything I was supposed to do. We got another glitch. So,
who runs your system? Seven Plus?
plus.
Did you call them?
I'm okay right now.
Who runs your website?
But
Sam.
Seven? But Seven doesn't run yours. Okay. Kudos for not paying the three.
Right.
Not cool. If something's added on a Wednesday, you should expect the administrator to brief you
Mhm.
very, very quickly. Give me the summary of the material that was added. Okay. Let me give you the summary.
But not the day of the meeting,
And
What's
certainly
that?
not the whole agenda.
not the day of the meeting. It's just too much for them.
Well, not like, don't call them before the meeting. They should give you the summary at the meeting,
Mhm.
Yeah,
necessary. If you didn't get a chance to read something, you should not hesitate to say, I noticed something was added late this afternoon. I didn't have time to read it. Can you give me a quick summary?
Yeah.
Regular
Well, you
meeting.
did, but what did you hit? So if you did not read that thing that's gonna get a vote, what's the right answer?
The right answer would be listen to the discussion. If you feel you have enough information to base a decision, go with it. If you're like, I still don't understand this, I really need to abstain. The difficult part of that process is if you have 5 board members and you got 2 on one side, 2 on the other, you're the 5th.
Mhm.
Abstaining puts it on the mayor. Is that really the right thing to do?
It's always right to put it on the mayor.
I don't get to vote that often.
Yeah, the poor mayor, we try to give her votes every so often, and that's the best way to do it.
Honestly, it depends on the issue. You know, if it's-
Yeah.
We put a sign here or there,
Yeah.
you know, if it's whatever.
I'm gonna spend $25 million on something.
Yeah, although hopefully that's not gonna be too vote.
I want to bring something up with the mayor real quick. As a previous board, we reformatted the mayor's position prior to an election. You have to do that about 6 months before the election happens, I think. And we really kind of like cut the knees off the mayor position because we're very concerned about a mayor who would take over too much. And I think we need to revisit that decision about what we want from a mayor, because we had a pretty big change we made as a
See,
4 years ago.
But see, I tend to disagree with that, Dave.
But let's not get into that now. I'm just telling other board members that we made some decisions 4 years ago that really changed the role of the mayor a lot.
Towards the end of the mayor's term?
No, but it's.
Before the
it's
next
all-
election
it's all
happens,
in
6
color.
months before, 6 months before an election, we can choose what we want that role to be. And we have some leeway about how much power we want to put in the role of the mayor.
But it's all
And we
in
made some
In a
decisions
resolution.
about changing.
the, no, it's all in the code.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are options in Colorado code, what you can do,
Oh.
we chose the conservative options.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing I would suggest we touched on is education, networking. Is anybody planning to go to CNO?
Where'd you go?
I thought about it, I would have to miss a board meeting, that's the big thing, is I'd have to miss a board meeting.
There is nothing wrong with not having a board meeting.
Yeah.
If there's a conference, or even if you have to go to a board meeting, just don't hold a board meeting that week.
Yeah.
You don't hold board meetings if a holiday falls on Tuesday.
But that's important.
We don't budget to send, like, for instance, when I went to that gas
Oh,
station,
yeah.
I agreed to pay my transportation and pay for my lodging, and the town paid $200 for my registration. That's how cheap it was.
Yeah, and the one time I went to see a town did,
We go on our own
Budget.
expense, so we don't budget to send
no, we
board
don't.
members to
So,
education.
yeah, so I have to.
So
put
that
it-
needs to change in the budget process.
Yeah.
When I was on the CML executive board, I paid my own way,
Yeah.
and it was expensive.
It needs
Because
to
they
change.
had meetings in Denver at 9 o'clock in the morning. I would leave at 2:30 in the morning to get there in time.
Think about it.
It's tough.
Seven board members, an administrator, and a clerk. What if you budget $5,000 per person for training a year? One, not everybody's gonna use
As
it.
you say, I don't think we're.
Not everybody's gonna use it. But at least you'd have the option of going, it's budgeted. It's not like you're gonna sit there and say, well, I can't go, we don't have the money for it. And you can barter and trade. You know, if you had something that you were tasked in all those mini groups to break out, and you went to the conference, it was great, you brought back the material, but you also want to go to CML, but you're out of budget money. But Dave doesn't want to go to CML. Dave, can I spend some of your budget? Can I go to CML? It's all there for training.
Wonderful idea, but the truth of the matter is we have some public members that $35,000 to train a board.
Oh, we have a board member that would say.
Yes, well, that's true.
You have a responsibility to be professional.
Yeah.
Professionals don't go about their business ignorant of what's going on in the rest of the world. You don't do it. You will lose more than $35,000 a year by reinventing the wheel and making mistakes that somebody else has already made that you could have avoided had you just gone to training.
Or at least been in contact with people that have
Mhm.
grants
Oh, my
or
God.
have done grants.
I
That
learned
was
so
the best
much.
thing for
The
me.
one time I went
I
to
learned a
CML.
lot.
This is those tough decisions you guys have to make. And yeah, there are some people that may not like that decision. But it's your responsibility to be educated. You can't shirk that responsibility.
It's just not come up, you know?
So here's an
We haven't
example of
talked about it.
networking. So the oil and gas conference, I met the guy from Gunnison, it's the VP for Gunnison. And so I got some feedback from someone in the community about, hey, the lighting of this proposal they have is a problem. All I have to do is send them a text. Hey, Travis, what's going on with this? Can you give me a call? So it's like really, you know, that kind of networking with CML, you can call someone and say, hey, you know, we have a real problem with this sewer treatment thing, whatever it is, what kind of alternatives are out there besides concrete?
Right, exactly.
And other communities, especially in California, and say, hey, man, we're doing like wetlands instead of concrete and things like that.
Yeah, it's just, anyone is powerful,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I don't think any of us ever thought about it, how important it is, so
There's one.
this is good.
So next budget year, you're gonna put training in the budget.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be
And for
5,000,
department,
or it could be
for
1,000.
department heads as well. Because I think our department heads have as much, they have more need of networking with their colleagues around the state.
Yeah.
You know, they need to go.
Every department, you give them a training budget.
Well, there is a training budget, you know, in the departments, I don't know, it's
Right.
not, but we definitely put it in.
Yeah, put it in.
Well, now whether people actually go to the training, we'd have to insist.
Well, look what's happening with finance, you know, when we get the finance thing straightened out, okay, how are we send Ruben into what this, or we send other people to this kind of training, so we
But
make
it's
sure-
not our job to figure out what trainings they go to. It's our job to put the money in the budget, and it's the town administrator's job to say,
Yeah.
you're going here and you're going here.
And we do have training, there is training in those budgets, I just don't know if it's enough, right? But it's there,
That should be a budget priority.
yes, yeah, very good point.
Okay, so the meetings happen on a consistent basis, you have time,
Yeah.
location specified, it's noticed, it's open to the public at all times. Procedural, non-procedural items, right? You guys may have, you have a trustee comment at the end. I've seen jurisdictions just say, okay, it's trustees' comments, and it's nothing more than time. So it's, Dave, you have anything you want to share? And it's just,
Well, we
well, you
did
know,
for a while, like, how did we do? Remember? Tom's
Yeah, that was
stuff?
very,
I think that's similar.
yeah.
You have announcements in the beginning, people can make an announcement, a trustee can bring up something that's not on the agenda that they want people to know about, I don't know if that's what you need.
It's really up to you. You know, what I've seen is, you know, a council person, may say, well, you know, I went to this conference and I learned a whole lot on this, that, and the other thing. I think it's very valuable. I think we should send somebody to that conference every year and consider it future. That's not really an announcement, but it's something that he should just talk to one of you individually and hold you all on it. It's a good, quick thing to bring up. It's how you want to meet.
Yeah, okay, and in this case, it was an agenda item, so I mean, it was in the packet, yeah, anyway. Yeah.
So there's very few things as we go through here that I'm going to strongly recommend versus just saying this is something you should think about. Special meetings, you know what those are, we don't need to do a whole lot. Work sessions, hey, we're in one, good job. The nice thing, the thing is you can't make decisions.
right.
No decisions, you just talk and work through stuff. Executive sessions, we had one or two of those, so you know what those are. Congratulations on what I understand having a good town attorney on board.
Oh, yeah.
That's valuable.
Yes.
It's not just the fact that I am one, but a good attorney is worth one. Know about that. One-on-one. Can you meet with constituents one-on-one? Sure.
Yes.
Okay, can you meet with staff one-on-one?
That's,
To talk about stuff.
Yeah.
We're not gonna tell
What
us-
kind of stuff?
If I
That's where we
have,
start the open discussion.
well, hey, Sam, I've got this piece of information I ran across on that other thing here, I want to give it to you. Do you have any questions about it?
Now, she reports directly to you, right?
No, oh, no, I'm just giving her information.
Does she report
Yeah.
hired by the board?
Yes.
Sam?
Clerk is.
No, the clerk is appointed by the board,
By the
but she
board.
answers to the town
But she's
administrator.
appointed by the board.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
she's 6, 7 last.
There is such a fine line here. You have to make sure that you're not interfering with the chain of command,
Right,
to put it the easiest way. And the best way to do it is if you have a short subject. I've asked Sam for information and she went and got it for me like instantly. It was great.
right.
But I make it very careful that I don't ask for things or order her to do things.
Correct.
If I need something desperately, I'll go to the administrator. That's my first stop. And meeting with the staff, it's a very delicate balance because you can unintentionally give them the feeling that you're ordering them to do something. And I am not in that chain of command.
Well, we can't do that.
Or that you're undermining the administrator.
There's the other thing.
So here's an example. When Paige and I were meeting with Shay, she wanted to be able to post things on the website. The suggestion was made going to Joanne. So Leslie wasn't in the office. I came to meet with Matt and said, hey, Matt, I don't know what the chain of command is here, but our planner wants to be able to post things on the website. Is that something that Joanne does, or how does this work out? And then he said, oh, it's really simple. She just meets with Shay just meets with Joanne and just gives her the content she needs and she can post it. So, you know, that's an example, but, you know, is that proper? Because I went to the chief who reports to the town administrator to ask that question.
And the chief is, we are switching it, that the chief is hired by the trustees
Chief.
of police.
Okay.
So in that case, you went the right way. If we assume that that person is working for us.
Okay.
Now,
Which is
what I would still expect,
Yeah.
and I'll tell Sam this now, and I know Leslie's listening, and I know Sam will convey it to the new administrator. If any board member asks Sam for something, and it's a piece of information about an upcoming agenda item or how something happened previously, she should ensure that the same information goes to every board member.
Okay.
And the same thing with the administrator. If you go to the administrator and say, hey, I really want to be prepared for this agenda item, can you provide me this additional information? And administrators got to make sure every member on the board has that same piece of information. The other thing is, even though you are the hiring and firing authority for the chief clerk and attorney, if you go to one of those people who are not truly in the direct chain of command of your administrator, they should be having regular meetings, and they should be letting the administrator know that you spoke to them about a certain topic. Just so the administrator can ensure that what's going on over here is in sync with what's going on over here. And your example of the website was great. Who's responsible for the website? Joanne. Ruben.
Actually, it was just recently changed. Ruben does it.
See,
Okay, so Ruben can put anything he wants on the website.
No. There are limits. The administrator is the one that really decides
Why?
what goes on. She's the professional. She runs the town.
Okay, but how does she decide what goes on the website?
We give policy.
You give policy direction. You're saying, hey, this is what we want that website to convey. This is the kind of town we want to appear as. So there is a little bit of danger in doing that, because what you probably hoped, and I certainly hope, is the person you went to will come back up the chain to Leslie and say, hey, this is what they want to do. Are you okay with that? And if so, then great. Then no harm, no foul.
So Dana, I
Yeah.
I unmuted myself. I do think that the administrator has to be the final decider on the website for this reason. We have priorities. For instance, right now, our priority is flooding information. And if I have somebody like Joanne making the decisions about where things go, it affects how people are able to absorb information. So it is true that Joanne has the technical knowledge, but she does not make the priorities for the website for information, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, and Leslie, I think you've got 4 board members and Samira and I all agreeing with that concept.
Yeah, definitely.
So you're good.
There has to be a top of the chain.
so Leslie, we need a section on planning. You know, for both planning efforts that are going on right now, some way for the public to click on a planning window so they can see what the affordable housing thing's doing and what the general plan is doing, because there will be updates from time to time that do that.
So what I would ask you is if people that are contractors request that they contact me. I do have an ongoing relationship with the strategic planners, and we're working that through. I did not hear from Shay about that.
Okay. Great, thank you, Leslie.
So we'll send Shay to you.
So one-on-one, obviously no forums allowed. If you've got a question, you've got an issue coming up, let's say it's a skate park. Is it okay for you to go to Trustee Marco and say, hey, this is kind of what I think would be a good design and a good use for sport skate park and how we should approach it?
I wouldn't.
Can you?
I can.
Is it unlawful?
I don't think it's unlawful, but I wouldn't do it. I would share it.
Skirting the edge. You shouldn't do that. The open meetings law is quite clear that you don't have private communications and basically kind of plan a course of action outside of the meeting. You need to make sure that all of your communication is done openly. In that situation, I would send a memo to Leslie and say, Leslie, I think Thomas needs to see this, and please let everybody else see this too. And that way you don't have any conflict whatsoever.
You're certainly covered if you do that.
Yes.
2 trustees can talk to each other.
Right, yes,
Okay.
but not 2 trustees and then I can't go to a 3rd trustee.
Ah, exactly.
That's shady.
Exactly.
Right,
You can't have the changes, you can't be polling
right.
people, it's your agenda item, and you're like, I wonder how this vote is gonna go. Hey, Dave, how are you gonna vote? Rick, how are you gonna vote? Tom, how are you gonna vote? John, you can't do it, okay? But you can talk one-on-one. You may have maybe a joint project. We both may live in a particular neighborhood, and you may wanna talk about, Joe's complaining about X, Y, Z. Have you heard anything about that? What's your perspective? You can have those conversations.
Well, and we have 2-person committees, so we obviously have to talk about committee business just to us, and then we disseminate what comes out of it.
Perfect. So ex parte communication. Ex parte communicate, we'll give you a hint. Ex parte is what language? Latin. What primarily deals with Latin?
Oh, law.
The law. So ex parte communication deals with judicial, quasi-judicial proceedings. If you're doing any kind of public hearing, you can't have ex parte communications, period. If you have a legislative issue, so you're thinking of passing an ordinance, you're thinking of hiring a particular administrator, can you talk with a citizen and get their input on it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Not about an administrator unless it's a finalist.
Well, yeah, there is that.
Yeah,
There is that.
right, but it's the decision, you know, they don't want to say, well, I don't think that's a good decision, or I don't think it is, or it is. Yes, you can. In a legislative environment, you can. In a quasi-judicial, you cannot. This is how most people think you make decisions, you know, that's,
Oh.
that's a whole bunch of people, and that's what we decide.
Sometimes I think that's the way we make
Trustee
decisions.
Newsom said that again. And again, you have legislative duties and you have quasi-judicial duties. Really run into the danger zone when you're in the quasi-judicial.
You probably didn't know we had a whole meeting about that.
Yeah.
Another special meeting about quasi judicial abuse and.
I mean, seriously.
No,
Yeah, Nick and
Okay,
Leslie.
good. So public meetings, when you're doing your legislative act, most of your business is legislative. Okay, and pass a budget and approve a bill, approve a contract. You want to get input. You want to have broad, inclusive public participation. You want to explain the content, the big picture. You want to do all this kind of stuff. You want to eliminate jargon and acronyms and keep staff from doing that as well. Make sure they really explain things that are going on. Remain courteous no matter what. So the issue is, what is broad, inclusive public participation? And what does the public participate in?
We're pretty open.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I personally think it's a good thing,
Okay, Why?
because I like the way we used to do it when people could comment on our motions. At the time, we made a motion, so we got their input, because they brought up things we hadn't considered.
I used to do it. You don't do it that way anymore?
No,
How
now
do you do it
people, they have to speak up before the motion.
Well, what we do is whoever is bringing it up, say it's a board member or community member, they come up, they present it, then we take community input, then the board does a discussion, makes a motion and makes a decision.
And you do that on every single item.
Every single item.
Interminably.
in
Yes.
terms of-
Why do you do that?
Because some people,
You are the only,
I know we're the only jurisdiction that does it.
and you're the only jurisdiction that would rate themselves a period and a half on how you govern yourself.
Because we spend more time getting public input in the business meeting than we do business.
Well, I'd like to say that I think it's getting better because we have Leslie, who is a very professional administrator, and our agenda packets are getting much more complete. That was not the case previously. So there was a lot of information, people didn't even know what we were deciding on, and we didn't even know what we were deciding on. We were never given pros and cons. So I would just like to opine that the meetings are not long right now because of the public in most cases. We just are still working through getting those agenda packets more complete, because we have to ask a lot of questions still, unfortunately. So I think it's gonna work itself out now that we are being presented better information that's factual and meets our code. That was a lot of the reason for people's outbursts.
I agree with that entirely, that the packets are much more complete and it's much easier to get a grasp on the issue. I don't have to ask a dozen questions in every meeting on every issue because it's there.
Right.
And I think we're making very good progress. I've got to say that the way the agenda is organized, where we can click on an item and then it goes right down to that item, makes my life. When you've got 300 pages and you're scrolling through 300 pages trying to find the spot. Life is not good.
Way to bookmark and Adobe doc.
Yeah,
It
yes.
helps if people have made it where they can go to the command symbol on any page and it'll take them back to the agenda.
Yeah, this is
Yes.
the other thing, I think the way we have changed it, citizen input has made a big difference, and I think Nick's comment when we made this decision really changed my mind about this as well, because he made the comment that what he seemed to see in the meetings is that when we had the board discussion and made a motion, that what the public was commenting on was our discussion. And they were weighing in on our discussion, and then it ended up being this big back and forth with the public. And now, when the information is presented and the public has to say something, most of the time the public doesn't have anything to say.
What do you call that time on the agenda? What is it called?
Public comment.
Public comment.
Well, there isn't really, there's in the very beginning of the meeting, anybody can go and speak about something that's
Anything
not
that's
on
not
the
on the
agenda.
Okay,
But there is no call out for public comment, it's just kind of in the,
what is it?
there can,
I asked for public comment.
on every agenda
On
time.
every-
Public comment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And how often does comment turn into discussion, question, and answer?
You know, and it's much less often. It used to be when they commented on the public, it was every single time, every single time. Now,
Almost
now we
everybody.
have, one, maybe two people who will get up and comment on every single agenda
And
item.
you set a time limit.
Oh, yeah, 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay.
3 minutes, that's what they get. And sometimes the comments are relevant, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're informative, sometimes they're not. But,
Who's
Does
the
it have-
parliamentarian?
huh?
Who's the parliamentarian? And is the parliamentarian holding people accountable to speak to the item?
When I have had at times to call in the lawyer as our major parliamentarian to stop comments that were not
Appropriate.
appropriate, and because I have had the public yell at me and will not sit down and be quiet.
And what do you do?
Well, I need to be better at just saying, we're gonna take a break. I asked the board to take a 5-minute recess and just call it quits.
You must be respectful to the public,
Right.
but you expect the same thing back.
Right.
And this gets back to, do you begin to start calling each other trustee Knudsen, trustee Page, mayor? What do they call them?
Aaron.
Makes it a whole lot easier when you don't have respect for the person because it's the first name basis.
Yeah.
And, these are recommendations. One thing I applaud you for doing it, change the structure. It is not an open discussion or argument. I go back to the one meeting, just absolutely drove me crazy. I was here for it. And somebody got up and it was a agenda item on disposal of surplus property. And the person got up and wanted to know how old the greater blade was that we were selling, and did it have so much wear on the blade? And that was allowed. And on it went for 15, and then it was item by item through the surplus property disposal list. I'm like, oh my God, this meeting is never gonna get over.
Yep.
Public comments, have a comment. That person should have been limited to, I'm concerned with whether that greater blade has appropriate wear on it before we just get rid of it. Thank you for your comment. That's it. I don't need to argue. And, back to the point at that time, the finance person and the city administrator were arguing with this person and arguing with the trustee. That should never happen. Having that public comment, beginning of agenda item is just that. Let the person come up 3 minutes, and it shouldn't be a strain. If you have 60 people here because they're interested in this one issue, it shouldn't be 60 people coming up saying the exact same thing. You can also limit that.
And we do that in hearings, it's very clear in hearings that people can't. Well, I think you said that too, that you can't just get up and repeat.
Right.
Well, that's in hearings, definitely in hearings.
Do you allow a speaker to give the remainder of their time to someone else? Okay, all right. So you're on the road.
Well,
To do
one
it
of the
that
things that would really work best is we don't bring the minutia of running the town to the town board meeting.
Correct.
We're a
Or leave it
policy.
on consent.
Right.
Yeah.
We are a policy board, and I should never even think about we're selling something and whether or not it's a useful item. That's not our deal. Talk to the town administrator tomorrow.
And that's the thing too, you know, the biggest discussions that we've had, the biggest ones, was we wouldn't be allowed the public to comment on the administrator's report, and we no longer allow that. None of the staff reports are allowed for public comment at all.
You're on the right path. Dave, you got anything, other thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking about reactivity. I'm pushing buttons. And essentially, our meetings were designed more to push buttons. So if someone would make a comment and then there'd be a public comment about it, someone else, and then we even do that with each other. You know,
It's hard not to.
and it's hard not to. And so designing the meetings so that we have thoughtful comments submitted in advance, that's the way I like it. Instead of reacting to what someone said. And that's the way I felt our previous board meetings were going down the tubes in, where there was a lot of reacting to what someone said, or reacting to this person, or reacting to that person. And, you know, we're not here about reactions. We're here about thoughtful moving forward and trying to be constructive versus destructive. I've seen a lot of destructiveness. And so to me, I kind of look at, is this person trying to build up the town, or are they trying to tear down stuff? And then if they're tearing down stuff, I just ignore it.
And just to follow up on that, the thing I think that is helping is, again, like I said, people can read the agenda packet and understand what's being put in front of us, so they can ask a question ahead of time. In many cases, it's not 100% at this point, but that we have a new system where people have to submit a form if they want to come here, and they have to answer certain questions, and what is it you want the board to do? Now, unfortunately, there have been instances where we didn't get enough information on that form, and we still had to ask questions of the person making the presentation. But it's so much better, and having that information ahead of time is helping the public decide, oh, you know, this is no big deal, but they can come prepared to ask the question.
And you know, just back to a protocol thing, again, the conversation is not from the board to the citizen. The citizen provides comment. If you feel like, I'm not quite sure I understand what they mean, you don't ask the citizen.
I ask Mary.
You ask the mayor. Okay, Madam Mayor, I'm really not quite sure. I appreciate the comments, but I'm not sure on this particular issue.
Clarification.
The mayor can ask for clarification. Again, she runs the meeting, but you guys, gals, trustees, should never be talking directly back to a citizen during a meeting. Just shouldn't happen.
We do good, and then we fall back, so we just have to get better at it.
And you're the person that's got to hold it accountable.
Right.
And I know it's tough. I've seen you do really well sometimes.
And really lose it.
And then it's
I do.
It's tough.
I
It's
do.
tough. But look at the bright side. You don't actually have to vote most of the stuff.
You can't take the blame.
I'm impressed. You guys are making progress. It's great. I'm gonna come to a meeting.
So much better.
It's awesome.
I can tell you, I would open an agenda packet and my stomach would just be like this. Even as a citizen, before I got on the trustees, I don't do that anymore. I open it and go, all right.
And the thing is, goes to that whole transparency thing, right? We're not hiding anything.
Right.
There's nothing to hide.
Part of the problem with the interaction with the public is they're absolutely convinced that there's a conspiracy to hide everything from them.
And we just have to make it clear we are being transparent.
We have to be very clear about it.
Yeah.
And they need information as much as we do.
Right.
And they have a right to that. And I think we're getting much better. I'd like to see some improvement, but I think we're way better than we were even 16 years ago.
I think this is where I just drop the mic and leave. You're getting it. I'm proud of you. You're doing
And we have
good.
really good staff. The staff has really stepped up. I think
Excellent.
Sam and everyone else, it really has made a huge difference.
Excellent. When you have a public hearing, announce the rules in advance. Hopefully all your rules about time limits and when people speak are as an introductory paragraph on your agenda.
Oh, that has, no, it's not.
No,
It's
for
been
the
written
hearing.
out.
It's not on the agenda?
No, it's
Where
not.
you say it.
I say it, I do it verbally, but it's not.
You should put it on the top of the agenda, because then it's in the packet that the public is accessing, then it'll show up.
Ding, you do that, Sam.
Okay? And the same thing with quasi judicial. When you call a hearing to order, you should be announcing the rules, you should
Yeah, I
say
do
this is
that.
what you're doing, and moving through. Remain unbiased while you're hearing the evidence. Sometimes that's difficult. You know, it's the old NIMBY thing. Hey, that's a great project, but don't do it in my backyard. And you can do it on the other side of town, don't do it on my side. And show you're listening. I can't tell you, one rule I give you is just sorry, Paige, I'm picking. What Paige you do, you pick up your phone. You're doing this during the meeting.
I just have to report
I'm
that.
just kidding.
No. I had not heard back from Thomas. He texted me back. That's why I picked it up, because he thought it was Friday.
Okay.
He thought the meeting was Friday, so.
You've got to be completely engaged. Now, it can be a challenge. You've got your laptop, all of you have laptops now, right? And that's what your agenda is on, and nobody can see what you're doing on it. It's one thing to pick up your phone, everybody knows what you're doing. But if you're looking at something, just always give them the impression that you are paying attention. So if you're checking email or something because it's a staff report and you know all that stuff already, don't get so engrossed that you're like doing this and clicking and typing and doing everything else. Very, very careful. It goes back to that body language, tone, and posture thing. Importance of the strong chair. And it sounds like your board is behind you. They want you to be that strong person. So, yeah, don't feel bad about it.
No, working on.
Stay on tangents, or stay on task, avoid the tangents. Keep the public on the agenda when it's legislative, and keep the presenters on task when it's quasi judicial.
There's a question about audience responses. I know that one of our commissioners was here for a public hearing. It was not conducted by us, but it was conducted by the Oil and Gas Commission. And the Oil and Gas Commission chair was allowing public response. And that's what this commissioner was really upset about, was that, there was a lot of public response against fracking, against the oil industry. And so people that were coming up that were talking in favor of oil were like almost not shouted down, but then people that talked about anti-fracking and stuff, there'd be applause and stuff. So right at the beginning of the hearing, the commissioner had said there will be no responses, but it was not enforced. And I just think that was a really great example of how important it is during a public hearing, that this is not a poll to see whether people are in favor or against this kind of thing. This is a chance for the board to hear public input and to act on it, but not to conduct polls or see what the applause meter is saying. It was just a really bad example. That's happened here.
Quasi judicial. You're sitting as a judicial body. Only thing is you don't have robes and a title. So you would not expect that kind of decorum in the courtroom. You shouldn't tolerate it in your board. And you make it very clear, the first outburst, that's it. No more, or you'll be removed. It's not appropriate. This is a hearing. It's not a popularity contest. We're based on facts and evidence. Okay.
Well, we have a bad reputation. I mean, I sat down at the table with the commissioners oil and gas thing, and first thing out of their mouth is, "What's wrong with Paonia?" kind of thing. People have a really bad impression of what's happening up here.
Kind of a mob rule.
That's the way it feels. Yeah.
Respect it a lot of times, and you just gotta stop. It's not a mob. It's 7. 7 elected people and appointed staff. Take care of it. We got all that. Careful motions can never be good enough. So decision making, what makes the meeting effective? Everyone had a meaningful opportunity to participate. And the way you've restructured it, saying at the beginning of an item, this is what's meaningful to me as a citizen, I'd like you to consider it. That's a meaningful opportunity to participate. It doesn't mean that because Rick says something to Paige, and Paige has a counterpoint, that a citizen needs to get back up and say, well, I really agree with Paige, because she's smart, she's my neighbor, and I like the cookies she makes. No, you had your input, you gave us your perspective.
We do like her cookies. You brought that brewer, oh no.
My husband's seen it.
Yeah. We like Shane's cookies.
She had cooked.
It's amazing, throw out some crazy stuff in meetings, somebody always picks up, oh yeah, that's what we did. So you've given them the meaningful opportunity to participate. It again, doesn't go back to the model of cheering or screaming or clapping or anything else. They have to feel they were heard, and that goes back to paying attention, giving people eye contact. You know, a good presenter at the podium isn't going to just come up and look at one board member. They're going to kind of look back and forth. If they're looking back and forth and you're doing this, they're not going to feel like you're heard. So particularly when you've got members of the public, get your nose out of the computer, off the agenda, look at it, make sure there's eye contact going on, so they'll feel important. The relevant issues, we talked about that. If you have an issue, make sure it's addressed. You know, there are some times where you have to be very delicate on it. You've heard something maliciously bad about an applicant. You don't really think it's true, but gosh, you know, did this person really do this? If you bring that up in a public meeting, oh God, no, you're really running into danger. So try to get those kind of issues cleared up beforehand. Be very careful not. They left with Sam, the CML and CIRSA guide on when elected officials get into trouble. And a lot of it is bad mouth and defame people. There's no immunity because you defame. So be very careful. Make sure your decision is clear and then it's defensible, because as a quasi-judicial, you're subject to judicial review.
This is the most recent.
Oh, I know, yes.
Did y'all read it?
No, oh, in that magazine,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're on track with that, right?
Yeah.
And then just make sure it's defensible, even if it's a legislative item and you enacted an ordinance to impose a civil fine on somebody who cited for a code violation. Make sure it's defensible. Even if you were on the losing side, you should be able to defend it. And again, I said it before, it's well, that's what the other idiots decided, and I don't agree with it. No, it's a board policy, it's a board law, it's a board ordinance. This is why we're doing it. Oh, Mayor Backman. I think we need to give her a chair like that. You make all the difference. You really do. I hate to put it on your shoulders, but we've spoken before about it. You do the communication, you set the tone, you ensure the civility. I would suggest that you put a little cheat sheet next to your computer and have trustee Nixon, trustee Page, trustee Marco, and whenever you address one of them, you lead it. Because if you start doing it, they'll start doing it back, and then they'll start doing it back. And you set the tone. So, but you can set that tone. Any one of you can do it, but really it's kind of your.
there, Mr.
Am I gonna do it again?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm worried about liability.
Yeah. So you're the timekeeper, you're the enforcer.
Yeah.
It kind of all falls on you. You can always fall back on the attorney as for advice, and again, I'm glad you've gotten good improving. I think, you know, these are the things you've done. It's great. I would watch, it talks about watching for nonverbal cues. Keep an eye on your audience. Sometimes you'll pick up that somebody's getting ready to really kind of get out of control. Sometimes that's a good time to call a recess before that happens and let things calm down. So just kind of be aware of that. Planning decisions. You guys have a planning commission, I think. Ultimately, those come to you sometimes, and those can be tough decisions. They are small p political and personal. And I say political because to get a majority, whatever your common philosophies are, that's all it took. They're personal because sometimes it's just something you don't agree with. You have to recognize that, just not pretend those factors don't exist. They do. Patience, talk about that. Nervous, not being prepared, not asking enough questions, asking for a vote of the audience. No, man.
Oh my God.
I've never seen you guys do that, so thank you very much. Actually, I'm wondering.
We did ask how many are willing to volunteer, blah, blah, blah. Remember?
No, that's
I think I did that one time.
Clean up or something.
That's not, I think that's okay. Show the bias before you make a decision. Try, particularly in quasi-judicial, any kind of hearing, do not state your position to anybody before you come in and have the hearing. And that can be tough. You have loved ones, you have friends. It's good gossip, it's really fun, but you just can't do it. That'll get you in trouble because then you can be sued for violating due process because you'd already made up your mind and didn't listen to the evidence. And then don't try to be the architect. Don't try to second guess staff. And why are you doing an 8-inch line instead of a 6-inch line? Let the pros do what the pros do. Social media. How many of you have social media accounts?
I have one, but.
Don't use it for government.
Oh, gosh.
No government, good. Keep all your government stuff off of social media. Don't respond to social media. Does the city or the town have a web Facebook page?
Yes.
Do you get comments to the Facebook page?
Sometimes hundreds.
I think those have been shut off. Didn't we decide?
No, we cannot shut
Can't
them
shut them
off
off.
because then we're going after free speech. So, but it's stated very clearly that there are no responses. I did one response recently, and it's because I told people that there was gonna be street sweeping, but I didn't tell them what street.
Oh.
I was like, oops, sorry.
That's legitimate. It's not getting
Yeah,
into.
But no, I turned off notifications on it. I don't even get notifications when a comment is made, and I don't go on to any Facebook groups of the town either.
Good. All right. That's best course of action. Decision-making findings of fact. This is all goes through quasi-judicial. You just had a training on that, so we won't belabor that. Defensible, this is kind of a repeat. Make sure follow all those things. Again, we talked about it. The motions, again, whether it's a planning motion or a legislative motion, prepare the motions ahead. It's not hard. I move blah, blah, blah. You can change it once you get here, but at least you have a place to start from. And at least, if it's Trustee Newton's motion, at least you know where he's coming from. And you can come in and say, well, I don't like that language, let's change to something else, but it makes the process a whole lot easier and a lot faster. This is the whole break things down, don't get complicated motions. This was an interesting case study out of Lakewood. Starting in 2016, they started looking at how are people participating in person or online. And they found people really like to participate online. And like you noticed, most of the people who show up in person were retired. And they didn't get the young working parents and everything else, but they liked online participation. So, again, this isn't to say go fix this or improve it.
But maybe, I can't read the bottom of that one graph with the red arrow. What is that?
When do people comment online? And most of them were at 10 a.m. between 10 and 2 p.m. in the morning. So when you have a comment period, your agenda goes out and you let people comment. When are those comments coming in?
Oh, we don't do that. I mean,
Yeah, the agenda goes out and then people can send letters.
right, but we don't have
Online
an
comment?
well, yeah, they could send us an email, but most people don't. But people can comment during the Zoom, the active Zoom, and afterwards when they watch it later, I believe. But we don't get comments from people at 10 in the morning unless they send us an email.
So are people who wouldn't participate in person more likely to participate at the same time on Zoom?
Yes, we have a lot of people that watch on Zoom
Really?
during the meeting and that look at it later, and I believe they comment later too. But there's nothing to watch ahead of time. They can get the agenda packet.
But if they have the agenda packet, wouldn't it be nice if they could comment on the agenda packet before the meeting?
I don't know how.
Yeah.
They submit a comment, and that's in the packet that she gives us. She says, here's the comments that have come in.
They
So they
did
did
it through an email, but that's the only
Just
way we're
email?
accepting comments is through
Okay,
email
well,
unless I'm wrong.
How you do that technologically is up to you. Lakewood clearly had a pretty sophisticated thing, and that's up to
We're not there.
your internet folks how to do that. There you go.
Yeah,
It's not easy.
yeah.
Governing isn't easy. It wasn't meant to be easy. We go back to the beginning. We don't trust government. We don't want tyranny. We don't trust. It's ingrained in us since the beginning of our nation that we don't trust government. It's not because, 10, 15 years ago, somebody walked away with a bunch of your money. It's not because you argue with each other. There's a fundamental level of distrust in government. And the best you can do is be as transparent as you possibly can at all times and avoid that kind of behavior that was going on previously, where there's this arguing back and forth and disrespect. So the citizen in the audience starts asking one of your P and Z people questions. They're up here saying, this is why we want to do it, these are the plans, and this is the way we're going to progress, and some of the audience starts asking questions.
Not appropriate.
No. What do you think?
I don't think it's happened. Has
Yes,
it?
it
Now,
has.
this is a scenario.
Well, I'm just thinking that, when it's done, the person makes their Well,
There is, during the planning, so during a quasi judicial proceeding, there is a time when the public can come.
Okay.
And they can come up and they can do their little thing, they get their 3 minutes,
But they don't actually, do they actually ask questions of the?
they can ask questions, they can ask questions, they
They
can.
can ask for clarification, but
Right,
they don't ask the applicant directly. It has to go through you first.
That's the theory.
That's kind of, I was trying to remember.
That's the theory.
yeah, that's.
So somebody's back here and this applicant's talking about how they're gonna start a psilocybin mushroom facility.
Mhm.
And in the middle of it, the person 3 rows back says, why are you doing
No, that's
psilocybin? What
not
security you're gonna do?
Absolutely not appropriate, it's not at the right time, they have to be recognized by the board, they have to stand up, they have to give their name, their address. There's a whole procedure that they have to go through, they can't just yell from the audience.
And you're gonna stop it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That I can do.
The opponent of the project challenges the time limit, saying that it's a very complicated process and project, and they need more time to tell their side of the story why they oppose the project. What do? Well, this one's you. This time you get an ABC instead of A1, A2, and 3.
Yeah, let's do this.
I generally thank them and say, I'm sorry, your time is up. And then they will ask the board, and then the board will vote them more time or not.
And you're talking a quasi judicial again.
Yes.
You're still in the hearing mode. What have we done?
We haven't done it in a quasi judicial thing.
I don't think
That's
it's
never
come up.
happened. But this has happened in a regular meeting
Many times.
many
Is
times.
there much that can't be said?
In 3 minutes? If you can't make your point in 3 minutes, you can't make
There's
your
one
point.
particular person that can't do that.
Right, it is always given.
So here's the problem. If you're not consistent,
Mhm.
why, somebody else said, well, I need more time.
Mhm.
And then you don't give them time and you get sued.
Mhm.
We could.
But this hasn't happened in quasi judicial.
No.
Not
No,
even
but it-
legislative.
It's legislative too. It's
But can you get sued for not allowing?
Yes.
the other-
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Make the motion?
Yeah, it's free speech.
Oh,
Why is that person, you're prejudiced against me? I'm
Right.
white, I'm black, I'm female, I'm Hispanic, I'm short, I'm disabled. Pick the individual
We
characteristics.
just don't
You
like.
treated me differently than you treated that person.
Mhm.
If it's 3 minutes, it's 3 minutes.
What is our time limit when somebody is on the agenda and they are presenting to us?
Generally 5 minutes.
Fine, okay, and that's the difference, and the person you're talking about was on the agenda,
Nope,
and he wanted more time.
nope, it's then that person gets up and
But I
say
think
the 3 minutes is up and somebody will say, well, he's relevant to the issue. And then,
right, which has generally been me, but when he was on the agenda the last time, he got 5 minutes.
yeah, oh,
And that
yeah.
was- So to me, there's kind of a difference that.
The 5 versus 3, yeah, but 5 is 5,
Yeah.
3 is 3, and no extensions going in. When you come to me, and you're gonna come to me within the next year or so, asking for $1 million.
Yes,
And
we
you're
are.
gonna have to go to a hearing and present your case to the Energy Impact Advisory Committee. You get 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Period. And at 7 minutes, you're done. They'll turn off the mic. And it doesn't matter, you got $1 million for your town riding on the line. You can hold these people to 3 minutes and 5 minutes, but treat them all consistently. So what do you do?
I say the end, I'm sorry.
So the end.
I try and stay, I try and give them a few seconds, but like, yeah, your time is almost up, please wrap up your.
So I would recommend.
Oh, we tried to have a big clock.
No, you don't need a big timer.
What?
You don't need a big timer. There's a little device, and it's got a green button, a yellow button, and a red button.
Oh,
And when she hits it, it's programmed 3 minutes. And at 2 minutes, it goes yellow, and at 3 minutes, it goes red.
That's gotta be easier than the timer.
oh my God, we tried the timer.
And
It
then
did not work.
the viewer sees it, I've done that at BLM.
Yeah.
Do that at
Just
BLM.
make it clear, it's there to everybody, the public can see it, the speaker can see it, be consistent, make sure, Sam, you always just press the button, or whoever's doing it, try to press the button.
And does the person, does it sit here and Mary can see the other side? Do you know? Do you know?
There's different devices.
Okay, it just seems like you'd have to see from both sides.
Well,
If you put it here.
Yeah, there's things that are audible, there's things, but if it's just you looking at your watch,
That's distracting too.
one, it's distracting, and two, I'm looking at my watch back here because I think you're not fair.
right, yeah.
And I said, no, you're getting back 3 minutes, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
No, use the same device,
Yeah.
consistent
Okay.
all the time. Okay. So now you're gonna deny a project. Applicant says, yeah, you're not treating me fairly, I'm gonna sue you if you deny it. What do you do?
All communication has now ceased. We will communicate through our attorney. Done. Once they threaten to sue, it's over.
Okay, but what do you do?
You don't change your decision. You know, you've made.
We haven't made a
Well,
decision
what
yet.
about B? I'm trying to read B. I'm having trouble reading this.
My point is, if you not approve you make your decision on the merits of the project. You don't even worry about anything else. But if an applicant says that if you don't approve this, we're gonna sue. The point right there is this discussion is over. All discussions will go through our attorneys. It ends the project. It ends the whole thing. And what that does is it ends the threat of lawsuit in an open meeting. Because once they claim that they're gonna sue or they threaten to sue, you are at risk, no matter what you do. You approve it, you don't approve it, you're at risk. If you approve it, you can have somebody say, well, you approved that because you were threatened to be sued. And we're gonna sue you for approving a bad project. And you're open.
But you have to make a decision.
Right,
My decision on the merits of the project.
yeah.
But you have to make a decision.
B is what you'd have to make sure.
Right.
And then if
Because
this,
if you don't make a decision, you have timelines that kick in that are either an automatic
and that's where B
denial
is
or
like,
approval,
yeah.
I'm not sure.
place to make sure the motion
Yeah, sounds like
is
B.
clear. And then if they want to sue, then you of course say, we made our decision. It's-
Yeah.
But we have to make a decision in that hearing.
She has nothing to sue about until we've made a decision.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, that's true.
I think,
But a
to your,
threat of a lawsuit should end of all discussion.
to your point, it certainly ends discussion with the applicant. And I would not engage with the
No.
applicant anymore,
Yeah.
and I'd call for a motion.
Call them
And
out.
unless there's additional discussion, call for a motion. And move whichever direction you're gonna move. Do it, like it says, make sure all the staff work is done, all the evidence is done, make your findings very clear. Okay? Legal and ethical issues. How we doing on time?
Not good, we're an hour late.
Good. Man. Okay, ex-party contract, we talked about it. We talked about that, we talked about that. We talked about that. Now, this is kind of, what do you do if somebody tries to talk to you? somebody's got a project and they want to talk to you.
It's real easy. You
If
just
it's-
explain to them that you can't talk. Like Mary tried to approach me at one of the concerts about the fence thing. I said, Mary, I can't talk to you about that. You know, this is the reason, because we're gonna be making a decision about that. And that's ex parte. So you just explain it to them.
Good. Some places, this is Chaffey County has a little thing on their site about why you can't have ex
That's
parte.
not a
That's a
bad
good,
idea.
that's a good approach.
Mayor, leader for decades, calls up the newest board member 2 days before a public hearing. So you got a new board member coming in, you say, oh, you know, I got some information this guy needs to know. Is that okay?
And this, you're talking a hearing, are we just in everything or a judicial hearing? Oh, yeah, absolutely not.
No, not, it's big, don't do it. All right, now, you got a project, and you wanna go look at the site. And you go out, and the project developer is on site, opens the gate, lets you in, you don't talk to him at all.
It's still contact.
Yeah.
It looks bad.
So what do you do?
It's unethical.
You don't go.
Don't do it.
Don't go to the site visits in the first place.
So you don't wanna see the site where something's being constructed.
It should be on all the paperwork.
Yeah, it should come to you.
Except
should
one
have a
just came
cycle.
up for the planning or the Board of Adjustments, which was at my corner of my street. So if that was coming to me, I would be walking down the street seeing the project coming. I would, so, I mean, in this little town, it's kind of hard to not see it from afar.
What-
But I'm not going in on the fence. I'm not gonna go into the
That's
project.
what Nick said, is that if you're gonna do a site visit, everybody goes, all at once, everybody goes.
Well, then,
Everybody sees it, and then you don't talk about it, you don't do anything, you go see it as a group, and then you leave. But you don't do it individually.
but I'm
Yeah.
walking, but I can't avoid seeing the house on the corner. I drive by it. And should
But
I
you
not?
don't walk down there and take.
No,
stop and look at it.
but there are, in this town, it's gonna be very difficult if it's on your street, that you're not seeing the place that they wanna
So
do
what
it.
would you do?
I guess I'd say I live right down the street from this, so I would go by it every day.
And then.
And I'll let the administrator know, I go by it every day, so I know exactly what the lot looks like. So I guess everybody should go by it once, I don't know.
Up it comes for hearing, nobody else wanted to go, what do you do?
I think I say, this is right down the street from me, and I walk by it every day, so I do understand the layout of the lot.
You disclose at the hearing, B.
Yeah, because it's gonna be, I mean, it would have been very difficult for me to not see that house.
If you hate that neighbor.
Oh, I would never bring that up.
No, that's totally
What
inappropriate.
would you do? Still vote on it?
Of course, I mean-
Wouldn't recuse yourself?
if I hate that person, oh, I don't know,
Personal bias getting in the way of a fair and objective decision?
because they lived around, if I don't know, I guess if I hate the person, I would recuse myself, but I'm not in that scenario. I'm just telling you, when you live in Paonia, and this, you know, it's pretty hard not to see the property.
So ex parte communication is one thing, conflict of interest is another. When you have a personal and private interest, obviously financial interest, you hate the person, you like the person's, you know, gonna build a really nice new garage, put a poker in, or gonna put a freeze-dried machine in their backyard, you love their beef jerky or freeze-dried ice, whatever. If you have a conflict, you gotta disclose it, you gotta not vote, you gotta not influence the votes of other people. My personal recommendation, if you have a conflict of interest, leave it. Don't even be present.
Stick around for it.
Yeah, just leave the room, come back in when it's done. Yeah, go through that. You're convinced somebody else has a conflict of interest. What do you do? What do you not do?
Set up an informal meeting with
Set up-
the board member. Yeah.
You don't do B,
And don't talk to C.
and
There's no way C is not appropriate either.
you don't do C,
Because that's spreading stuff.
you don't do D. How comfortable are you with that?
Not very,
Not at all.
I'm very comfortable doing that.
So you just let it ride?
I probably call the attorney and say, look, here's what I'm thinking, what do you suggest I do?
If there's an obvious conflict of interest, it is in your responsibility to bring it up at some point. I think it's not in the meeting that the issue is going on in, but it should be brought up at a prior time. And possibly, best of all, executive session, maybe.
Well,
But I don't know that
that's-
there's an executive session thing that covers that.
The best answer is talk to the attorney. Because I personally don't think any of those are good.
So on that one was A.
A is your best answer, but it's not a good answer.
I mean, that's would be so uncomfortable.
Confronting somebody,
No, we're
I
not.
mean, what's the
Well,
basis
not in
of
the
the
meeting, it's
No.
no surprises kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like an ambush when you do that in a meeting.
Well, no, none of those are good in my opinion. Let's talk to the attorney.
All right, Sunshine, open meetings, you know about open meetings. You decided you can go grab a beer afterwards. We talked about it, can you?
Sure.
One other trustee, sure.
Actually, you can meet with all the trustees, but you better be damn sure you don't discuss any business, not even, how did you think the meeting went?
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it.
We
right
have
after a
this in
meeting.
social meetings in small communities. We went through this, and Christmas parties was the biggest thing. It was hard to go to a Christmas party in this town without seeing 2, 3, or 4 council members.
But in this scenario, you would not want to go to the bar after the meeting was over. That would look so bad.
It would look better.
It'd be terrible. No.
Perception is reality.
Yeah, perception is reality.
Perception is reality.
I
That
think.
transparency
And
thing,
all trustees, no,
No,
all trustees.
no way.
No,
God, no,
no.
because
you don't want to
would
drink with Rick?
I
First
would
of
go,
all,
I would go to Rick, I would go out with Rick, but not the board as a whole. Oh
The
my
whole
God,
premise-
that would
the
be
whole-
terrible.
the whole premise is wrong. In Paonia, they'd all go and smoke a joint together.
This is true.
all right, let's get you through all this.
And then they forget what was in the public hearing, so they wouldn't be discussing business. It's very simple.
Sursa has talked to you about the Colorado Immunity Act.
Yeah.
It's real simple. Protects you when you're acting within the scope of your duties. Is it your duty to sexually harass an employee?
Good God, no.
No. Is it your duty to sexually harass a citizen?
No.
Is it your duty to denigrate a citizen or a staff member or another board member? Is it your duty to fire a staff member of Public Works?
Not ours.
Is it your duty to convince the administrator to hire a particular person? That's pretty much it. You know, just stay in your lane. When we talked about the roles and responsibilities early on, if you stay in that and follow the rules, you're immune. And at the end of the day, you don't want to be paying your own attorney's fees. Because if Sursa says that was not in your scope of duties, guess what? When you get sued, you're on your own.
Yeah.
And you might as well get ready to take out a second mortgage or sell the second house or something else. Do not let it happen. Okay, as long as you stay within your scope of duties, Sursa's got you covered. They'll pay for the attorneys, they'll pay any damages, any settlements, anything else. Okay? That's all the stuff that's in there. Final thoughts, you don't need to know everything. You cannot know everything. You won't know everything. You have to trust professional staff. I get concerned when a government is without a professional administrator. Primarily because a professional administrator, and I'm not talking about, well, you know, Joe's been paving the roads for 12 years, let's just make him an administrator. A professional administrator, someone who's got experience. They bring a certain level of stability to the community that outlasts the stability of the trustees. You guys can come and go. You can get recalled. You can be out the next election. You need that stability and the professional expertise of an administrator. Failing to do that not only leaves the town without that professionalism, it sucks you out of your lane. And as you get sucked out of your lane, you might as well just open up your wallet, because it's just a matter of time until somebody complains about something you did.
Can I give you some disconfirming evidence?
Sure.
Our experience with the competence of previous town administrators is not good.
Professional administrator.
Well, that's what you're saying, but the reality is we're a very small town with not a huge budget. And it's very expensive to hire a professional administrator.
It's
And I
very,
just want to point out that the ones we've hired in the past have been either at the end of their career or very dysfunctional and have sent us down some pretty bad bunny trails. So I just want to point out that it's not always a panacea to have a town administrator.
it's not a panacea. But failing to do it is not gonna move your town forward. You will stagnate. Because you're in a position where you have to make some significant moves, some significant decisions, significant project oversight that your staff can't do individually. And you will get sucked into being out of your lane.
And that's
Is
my
there a
big,
way to be able to get both and? Is there a way to be able to have that competent coordination when you have competent staff? I'm just trying to throw out there, are there other alternatives?
You can change to a strong mayor scenario where your mayor becomes your town administrator.
but what if you elect a total jerk as mayor?
That's right.
Then you've got worse.
You have some administrator.
Then you have to recall, that's all you
That,
do.
you know, the administrator is on the trustees. Whoever, if we've had bad administrators, it lands in the trustees' lap.
Well,
It's the trustees who are responsible,
And in truth.
which is why this is taking a long time for what we're doing now.
Right, and in truth, at least one of those bad administrators was because the board of trustees took the good administrator that was hired. The board changed over right as that administrator was hired, chucked him out and hired out. It was on the
It's on
board
us.
of trustees.
The philosophy, and I say this all the time, hire slow, fire fast. So you hire slow, take your time, get the best person you can. If in the first 6 months, there's either incompetence or not a good fit, you move back and you start the process over.
Toss off something?
Yes, sir.
Just because of what trustee Payson said, one of the reasons you're seeing that you have such competent staff right now is because we're being taught by a competent administrator. She's teaching us our jobs just as much as she's helping you guys to find your roles. And all of us are new. So we may be competent and be able to learn, but we don't have the knowledge to tell either.
I'm just talking about the reality. The reality is we've had seriously failed attempts to hire
That doesn't.
twice in a
that's-
row.
that will
I'm not saying that no one's gonna come down with a check, but I'm just trying to figure out, is there a way to do both and? Is there a way to continue the relationship we have with Leslie, but not?
That's up to Leslie.
Yeah.
You know, there are some people that will serve long-term in an interim position. I would suggest you're not saving anything.
Yeah, I think you're charging war in the end because
Paying a bunch of money.
they cost a lot.
It's gonna cost you money regardless of what you do. And I guess I point back to the 50 to 70 years of neglect on infrastructure. Those were financial decisions. Well, we don't want to spend $1 million on this when we can do $1 million on a park. Because people thought that was fiscally responsible and would move the town forward. Well, guess what? It doesn't. It's devastating, this town. It really is. You guys are really gonna have to tighten the belts, and the citizens are gonna have to buckle up for a while to get through this call it crisis. It is what it is.
It is a crisis.
The same thing's true with administrators. If you neglect the administrator, you may have the best staff, the best department heads in the world, but each one of them is siloed and they know their function. They don't know how does that function fit into the bigger picture of what the board wants, much less how does that function fit into the available grants that are out there, the available programs coming from the feds. They just don't do that. They're experts in their individual area, a professional administrator. Again, I go back to the corporate environment. Google without a CEO would be a research and development area, a sales area, a marketing area, a production area, and they'd all be doing what they think is the best thing for the company. But without somebody riding herd, making sure that those individual activities are synchronous with each other, you're dysfunctional. You're dysfunctional. They're making products that the salespeople can't sell and production can't build. You've got to have that strong leadership, and it either comes from an administrator or a strong mayor form of government. It's your choice. It really doesn't matter. But if you don't do one of those two things, you just tread water. And I hate to use that term because you may be treading water. It's just not a good approach.
I've only been here 34 years, and there has never been a professional administrator until now. Our first administrator, John Norris, was the public works director. They fired the administrator, and they put him in the job and didn't pay him for it for 18 years. He worked for 18 years without compensation as town manager and public works director. And then we got rid of John, and we started out the trail that we've been on now. We've not had anybody that was professional, that had been trained, that knew what they were doing, that I really see. I know we had people that were professional, they were paid for being administrators.
Yeah, we had the one admin who was here he was over a year, wasn't he? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was
Yeah,
kind of an
Dan
interim,
Dean.
he was good.
Bill Crank was good.
Oh, yeah, he was another interim. That was good.
But he was one
Bill
over.
Crank.
But we can't seem to keep good health that way.
Well,
But we've never had any long-term possibilities of doing it. This is the first time. And I think we're doing a lot better now. We have a better chance of getting an administrator now because we're not as completely discombobulated as we were. I mean, we were shooting off in 100 different directions when we tried to hire the first set. And I think we're doing a lot better. And it's not because we didn't try. I mean, God knows that Paige and John worked their butts off for that. And they're still working their butts off for this. It's a hard deal.
And in truth, when I personally contacted all of our finalists last time to find out why they didn't continue on with the job. And the one, his partner was a geologist and figured he couldn't get a job in the area except in Grand Junction, and without a job, they couldn't afford to live here. The second one had health issues and serious concerns about
Medical care.
yeah, for his. And then one, the funniest one was the guy he interviewed with us. He did his taxes over the weekend, realized he had to pay so much taxes because he made so much money. He filed for Social Security and retired. Yeah, and the other one got another job. So, so it's not that they weren't attracted to the community. It's not that they didn't want to live here. It's that there were extraneous circumstances.
You've got challenges.
Yeah.
So Grand Junction's city manager now is making $250,000.
Mhm.
This is a bigger
Right,
town.
bigger town.
Oh, yeah.
But as you start to step down, when is the salary? And you've got housing issues. Houses aren't cheap, plus availability. I don't know how many houses are actually for sale.
Actually, more than you would
It's
think.
better
Yeah.
than it was, yeah.
Yeah. So
So
prices have come down a little.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
But,
fine.
you know, we need to raise the salary, and then that is a
Right.
trustee, and then we'll give a report on Tuesday.
Yeah. So,
Some decisions.
there's towns doing creative things. There's towns buying houses
Yeah.
and saying, here you go, you get a house. Now, that's imputed income, the person that they're gonna pay taxes on.
Right.
If it's below market. But at least there's housing available.
Right.
And that may be a solution for us, because our biggest problem is somebody that's a working crew member here. I don't see how they can afford to live here. It's impossible. We pretty much need to build an apartment building and for crew.
There's people doing it, there's hospitals doing it, there's schools doing it.
Just not quite.
We just need $1 million.
Yeah, you can't solve all these problems at
Right.
once, and particularly as a board without a professional administrator.
Right, exactly. And
You're going a
there's
million different directions, and none of you has the power to do anything.
anything.
Right.
Nothing. You can't do anything.
Right. And I really worry about a strong mayor I mean, I know, stepping into this job, I could not have run this town. No way
And
could I have done this job. And the person who ran against me, oh my God, would have been a complete failure.
And I want to tell you, Cheyenne, Wyoming does a strong mayor, and they have some terrible people. They're just people that get elected. They don't
Right,
know
they have
anything
no
about running a
skill.
government.
The biggest problem with
Crazy.
America is you can get elected as a total amateur and a fool.
Yeah,
Yes.
And that's really the biggest problem.
Yeah. And
There really ought to be a competency test in order to run for office.
Well, and if you're gonna be a mayor who's running everything and you have,
How
And
would
you
you
get-
do that?
yeah, and people have done it and it does not help.
It's a disaster.
It's the same challenge you have with internally moving somebody up because they're the last survivor.
Right.
on the island.
It's not a
If they
good
don't have the
idea.
experience,
It is a bad idea. So we're working on it and we'll talk about some alternatives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I would just tell you that I happened to speak with Andrew Cordy. I don't know if you know him. He's a recruiter. He
Is he-
recruited Gunnison's.
Is he-
city manager.
Andrew, is he with a firm or himself?
I don't recall.
Corgi like the dog?
Gorgey, I think. You can find him with here. But there are some recruiters out there. You can't afford the recruiting process of a big recruiter.
oh my God.
It's $35,000-$40,000. But you may want to talk to some recruiters just to explain the situation.
And get some other ideas.
Maybe they happen to know somebody that they can simply point out your listing or advertisement to.
Or somebody that's looking for a small town.
Yeah, I mean, they
Slow
keep
down.
a stable
Yeah.
of candidates who are looking to move from one place to another. And like I said, don't think that because somebody had a short tenure or they were discharged, it's death toll.
Yeah, Leslie has been really good about explaining that to us.
Oh, yeah.
She said a number of times that the average time in office for a manager is very short.
About 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing too, we have elections every 2 years. I mean, our next election, most of the board is gonna turn over. All you have to do is get a board who doesn't like the town manager, gone.
Well, and worse than that, they will blame the town administrator for everything that the board told the administrator to do.
Right.
But they have power over you because they just vote you out.
Right.
But then they also assume we have to get rid of the administrator, which is a huge mistake. Because as an administrator, we do the will of the board.
Right.
That's it. It doesn't matter what the board wants to do. The only thing we will say no to is unethical or immoral. And we're not gonna do it.
Or illegal.
And we'll walk.
Yeah.
It's just not gonna happen.
Doesn't follow the code
Yeah.
either.
So-
That's-
I think that's it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we're a little bit late.
Well, you're the one who has to drive back to Junction.
You do know
Sam has a
about
copy of this.
you do know about our deer problem, right? Between here and Oshkosh?
Yeah, a lot of them.
Do you really have to drive home? I have a place you could stay for free. Honestly, you could just get up and go.
Light once in a while.
I know, but just to be driving to Grand Junction right now, it just sounds awful.
At least he doesn't have to drive on 133.
Going.
That's right, try to jump the
east-
sinkhole.
Going east.
If you take a run at it, you can make it.